Hey there, sleepyheads. Welcome back to the channel. Before we drift into tonight's tale of Oo's End, the final era, I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from tonight. And what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. It's always magical seeing how far and wide this sleepy little community reaches. All right, lights low, blankets up. Let's begin. There comes a time in every story when the light begins to dim. Not because it's gone out, but because it has simply grown tired. The world of Ooo, once radiant with colors no language could name, begins to soften like a watercolor left in the rain. Its brilliance does not vanish in an instant. It ebbs slowly, like a candle reaching the end of its wick, still glowing gently against the dark. The fading of magic doesn't arrive with fanfare or despair. There are no battles, no cataclysms, just a quiet, settling a hush that drapes itself across the land. The clouds drift more slowly, as if uncertain where to go. Rivers hum softer melodies. Even the grasslands, once so vividly green, seem to sigh beneath the wind. In the distance, the elemental kingdoms linger like old memories. The Candy Kingdom's walls have lost their gloss, the sugary towers dulled by time. The Fire Kingdom's flames burn faintly blue, more like embers dreaming of what they once were. And in the icy reaches of the north, the cold no longer bites. It feels tender now, as if the frost itself has grown weary of its duty. Once upon a time, magic was the pulse of this land, not a force to be harnessed, but a rhythm that lived in every living thing. It shaped kingdoms, birthed strange creatures, and painted the sky in shifting colors. But now, that rhythm has slowed. The air that once shimmered with unseen energy grows still. The magical residue that once hung between every atom begins to dissolve, leaving behind something simpler, something quieter. Those who remain the last few wanderers of this world do not panic. They feel the change deep within themselves, but they do not resist. There is an understanding in their eyes, a calmness that comes when one finally accepts the end of a long, beautiful dream. They gather beneath fading stars and speak softly about the old days, about heroes, about laughter, about all the small wonders that used to fill the sky. Perhaps they know that this is not an ending but a return. For Ooo was never meant to last forever. It was born from chaos, from the ashes of the Great Mushroom War, and molded by the wild dance of elemental power. It was a dream the universe once had, vivid and strange, and all dreams, no matter how wondrous, must one day fade back into the stillness from which they came. As the elements weaken, their essence begins to blend. Fire cools into warmth, ice melts into mist, candy crumbles into soil. The boundaries that once defined the world between heat and cold, joy and sorrow, life and decay blur into one vast, peaceful balance. It's as though the world is exhaling after holding its breath for 1,000 years. The old wizards sense it too. In the quiet corners of forgotten forests, their spells falter. Scrolls that once glowed with runes now lie dull and gray. The air no longer answers their words. But instead of fear, many smile softly. They close their eyes and let their staffs fall to the ground, listening to the silence that follows, a silence not of loss, but of peace. Somewhere in the remnants of the Ice Kingdom, a lonely penguin waddles across the snow. The crown that once shimmered with unstable power rests upon a stone, lifeless now, its gems clouded with frost. The wind hums through the empty halls, carrying faint echoes of a voice that used to sing about lemons and princesses. Even the memory of the Ice King feels like it's drifting upward, dissolving into the sky, no longer trapped, just free. Beneath the ocean, the once mighty merfolk move slower, their scales dimmed. Coral palaces stand like bone-white sculptures. They no longer glow, but they endure, waiting patiently, as if honoring the world's final rest. Above, in the forest, the trees have grown tall and hollow, their leaves a soft silver hue. They shimmer faintly, glowing with the remnants of the world's soul, the last sparks of the mother gum that once gave life to all. And through it all, time feels different. Days blur gently into nights, nights into soft dawns that barely break the horizon. The sun no longer blazes, it glows like a memory of warmth. The moon hangs low, larger now, watching quietly over a world that has learned to rest. It is said that when magic fades, it doesn't disappear. It simply becomes invisible. It seeps into the soil, the water, the wind, resting there until the universe calls upon it again. So maybe, just maybe, Oo's fading light isn't death. Maybe it's the world falling asleep, curling back into the cosmic cradle that birthed it. A few small lights still wander. A moth drifts over the surface of a quiet pond, its wings glimmering faintly with the last bits of enchantment. Somewhere near the ruins of an old treehouse, vines have overgrown what once was a home filled with laughter and stories. If you listen closely, you might still hear the faint sound of a music box, soft, broken, but still playing. In this final age, no one seeks to rule, to conquer, or to create. The world no longer craves newness. It simply is. Every living thing feels the same pull, a gentle invitation to rest. The creatures of Ooo no longer speak in words. They hum, they sleep, they dream together, forming one vast lullaby that hums through the air like a heartbeat slowing at the end of a long day. Far above, the stars begin to fade too. Not in darkness, but in light, as if they are merging with something greater. They pulse softly, one last time, then stretch out into thin trails of gold. The night sky grows pale, washed in silvery blue. It's beautiful, but also deeply still. It feels like the moment between heartbeats, infinite, fragile, and sacred. And though the magic wanes, its memory lingers. In every ripple of water, in every gust of air, there's a whisper of what once was. The laughter of children made of candy, the songs of ancient vampires, the warmth of a talking dog's smile. These memories drift like pollen, weightless, timeless, waiting to be reborn in some faraway dream. Somewhere out there, perhaps beyond the edge of the dying world, a small light flickers gentle, curious, alive. A hint that the story may not be over yet, even as the world begins to fall into its long, peaceful sleep. The Land of Ooo, now quiet and pale, begins to change in ways that words can barely describe. The rivers, once alive with reflection and song, grow glassy and still. The wind, which once carried stories from one kingdom to another, drifts slower now, as if afraid to disturb the peace. Even the clouds seem heavier, not with rain, but with memory. They move like thoughts half-remembered, heavy and gentle, pressing softly against the endless sky. In the valleys, the last remnants of color fade like paint washed by time. The candy meadows that once sparkled with pinks and golds now appear soft and ghostly, like a dream someone is slowly forgetting. The caramel hills have hardened into glassy amber, and flowers that once sang with tiny voices now bow their heads in silence. The sweetness hasn't vanished. It's only quieted, becoming part of the earth itself, a flavor the soil remembers. Far in the north, where snow always whispered secrets, the cold is no longer cruel. It feels like a comforting blanket, a vast hush wrapping the ruins of the Ice Kingdom. A single frozen spire still stands where the Ice King once lived, its shape softened by centuries of gentle storms. Inside, the halls are empty, but faint blue light hums from the walls, pulsing like the rhythm of an old heart that refuses to stop completely. Sometimes the ice hums softly, and for a fleeting second, one could imagine the echo of a voice, awkward, kind, and lonely, drifting across the frost. To the west, in the fading fire kingdom, warmth still flickers beneath the ash. The lava flows no longer surge or roar. They glow faintly beneath the surface like the heartbeat of an ember. The fire people have long since become something else, not gone, but transformed into drifting lights that float above the ground. They no longer need form or flame. They are the last breath of warmth in a cooling world. When they move, the air around them glows for a moment, then fades, as if the world itself is sighing in contentment. Even the slime kingdom, once restless and bubbling, has become still. The ground is smooth now, translucent and calm, reflecting the pale sky like a mirror. No creatures stir beneath the surface. The constant movement, the chatter, the strange fluid life, it all seems to have blended into one quiet, eternal pool. The surface catches the faint shimmer of light from the fading sun, turning the whole valley into a sheet of soft green glass. And somewhere beyond all kingdoms, the old tree fort stands. It leans now, roots half buried in earth that has forgotten its shape. The door creaks open slightly, moved by the breeze. Inside, the rooms are filled with dust and sunlight, a frozen memory of laughter and friendship. A cracked sword lies beside an old backpack. On the wall, faint carvings remain, little tally marks, notes, doodles, reminders of adventures that once filled the days with joy. Sometimes, when the wind passes through, it sounds like Jake's voice, easygoing, warm, playful. Other times, it feels like Finn's quiet determination still lingers in the walls, like the echo of someone always ready for one more adventure. But even these memories are gentle now. They don't ache, they rest. They have become part of the tree, part of the soil, part of everything. It is in these details that the world feels most alive, not in the noise or color, but in the calm persistence of what remains. The magic may be fading, but what it created still breathes softly. It's as though the land itself is remembering, slowly, tenderly. Every face and voice it ever knew, every piece of laughter, every tear, every song. And perhaps that's the true essence of magic, not spells or fire or crowns, but memory itself, the ability of a world to remember that it was once alive, the power of a story to linger even after the storyteller has gone to sleep. Above the hushed land, twilight lingers longer than it should. The sun seems to hover near the horizon, unwilling to leave completely. The light turns golden, then silver, then pale blue. It paints the world in a calm that feels infinite. There are no shadows anymore, only gradients of peace. And through it all, there is a sound almost imperceptible, like the faint hum of the universe itself. It's the last vibration of magic, resonating through Oo's bones. A lullaby too old to have words, too soft to be remembered by anyone still awake. In the ruins of the Candy Kingdom, a cracked window catches that sound and carries it outward, rippling through the air. It drifts over empty hills and sleeping forests, over oceans that no longer rage. Everywhere it passes, the world seems to relax, as if every leaf, every stone, every forgotten creature hears the same message. It's time to rest now. And as that hum continues, a soft shimmer appears across the land. It's not bright, just faint motes of light, rising gently from the ground like fireflies. They float upward, dissolving into the air, carrying the last fragments of Oo's wonder into the sky. Each one seems to carry a story, a feeling, a whisper of what once was. Some glow pink like bubblegum dreams. Others burn orange like campfires in the woods. A few shimmer blue like memories frozen in time. The world is not dying. It's transforming, melting back into the endless dream that birthed it long ago. The magic, the life, the laughter, all of it returning to the source, waiting patiently for the next dawn that might never come, or might come somewhere new. The light that once pulsed in Ooo now feels different, not gone, but inward, quieter, as though it has folded itself into the soil. The entire world seems to have exhaled. The rivers no longer sparkle, but they glow faintly from beneath, carrying what little magic remains deep into the earth, feeding the roots of trees that stretch beyond sight. It's strange how peaceful it feels. You'd expect endings to be loud, full of despair or fire, but this one feels like a gentle evening, a long sunset that refuses to end. The air smells faintly sweet, like rain that's fallen on old candy stones. Even the ruins seem to smile in their stillness. They've been here long enough to know that time, like everything else, circles back upon itself. In the distance, a once golden castle stands in silence, its walls softened by moss. The great candy flags have turned pale and thin, waving faintly in the wind that no longer carries scent or sound. Inside, the halls are filled with dust motes that shimmer like faint stars. The grand throne is empty now, its caramel edges cracked and faded. But on the wall behind it, carved into the stone, are faint letters' initials, perhaps the last mark of a ruler who once sought to build eternity out of sugar and dreams. What remains of the Fire Kingdom glows faintly beneath layers of cooled stone. Tiny veins of heat pulse in the rock, like the heartbeats of ancient giants. Every so often, the ground trembles softly, not in anger, but in rhythm, like the earth breathing in its sleep. And if one were to listen close, really close, they might hear laughter hidden in the sound distant echoes of flame people who once danced, who once burned for joy rather than destruction. The Slime Kingdom, so often overlooked in the tales of Ooo, has become a mirror to the sky. The glassy surface reflects the pale moonlight, shimmering with faint ripples as if stirred by invisible hands. Sometimes a shape moves beneath the translucent floor, a shadow that was once a being, now only the memory of motion. The surface glows faintly green, pulsing with the remnants of life. The air there is cool, soft, and strangely comforting, as if even the slime remembers laughter and kindness. Across the world, remnants of forgotten life linger, flowers that once spoke in tiny voices now hum in the breeze, their colors muted but their presence eternal. The birds no longer sing, yet they still glide through the air, their feathers catching light that isn't quite there. They look like silhouettes cut from old memories, looping endlessly through the calm sky. And deep beneath it all, in the sleeping caverns where light has never reached, something extraordinary happens. The last fragments of magic, those tiny motes that drifted down over millennia, have gathered. They pulse in unison now, forming small clusters, glowing seeds buried in the dark. They do not grow, not yet. They only rest. But within them is everything Ooo ever was: laughter, sorrow, flame, frost, friendship, love. It's said that in the earliest days, before even Princess Bubblegum rose from the mother gum, the world of Ooo was silent, a wounded earth slowly rebuilding itself from ruin. Perhaps this is where it returns now, to that same calm, that same breathless waiting before rebirth. Up above, the stars begin to shimmer strangely, as if reflecting the quiet below. Their light flickers and bends, not in sadness, but in understanding. For the cosmos has watched this world since its beginning, through its wars and wonders, through every strange song and dream. Now it too seems to lower its gaze, dimming its brilliance to match the stillness of Oo's sleep. In this twilight era, the creatures that remain no longer fear time. They move slowly, deliberately, savoring each quiet moment. A fox with a silver fur wanders through an empty meadow, pausing beside a patch of glowing mushrooms. It watches them dim one by one and lies down beside them, curling into the soft earth. There's no hunger, no fear, only peace. The forests have grown vast and ancient once more. Trees tower high, their trunks twisted into strange shapes, their leaves pale and translucent. At night they shimmer faintly, each one holding a tiny spark of the old world, the last sigh of magic trapped within bark and root. When the wind moves through them, the forest hums like a choir of ghosts, each tone resonating with the memory of something beautiful. There's a certain poetry in it all. The world that began in chaos ends in calm. The world that once burned with unending life now glows softly with the remembrance. Every creature, every fragment of Ooo feels this rhythm, a heartbeat shared by all things as they drift into the same dream. Even the great rivers of the past have changed. The river of forgetfulness that once ran through the plains now barely moves, its waters clear as glass. Beneath its surface, faint outlines can be seen, shapes of memories, faces, and moments drifting slowly as if carried by invisible tides. Some say these are not ghosts, but the memories of the world itself, images preserved by the water so that nothing, not even time, can erase them completely. And perhaps that is what Ooo has always been, a living memory of the universe. A place where every dream, every emotion, every spark of magic came to rest for a while. It was never meant to last forever. It was a song, sung once in a cosmic night, lingering long after the singer's voice faded. Now that song has reached its final verse. The rhythm slows, the air grows still, the land listens. But endings, even quiet ones, have a strange beauty, because somewhere within the silence a gentle promise remains that nothing truly ends. It only changes its form. Magic cannot die. It only sleeps. And so Ooo sleeps too, wrapped in a blanket of starlight and memory, breathing softly as the last traces of its enchantment settle into the ground, waiting for the next dream to begin. In the last stretches of this age, the world has become almost translucent, as though the boundaries between sky, earth, and sea are melting into one great, luminous hush. The horizon no longer burns with light or darkness. It simply glows in shades of silver and faint rose, like the sky itself has begun to dream. The colors are gentle now and whisper soft. The air feels heavy with calm, the kind that only exists when everything that needed to happen already has. It's here, in this final stillness, that the last traces of magic hum faintly through the bones of the land. It's not the kind of magic that sparks or bursts or sings. It's the kind that listens old, patient, and endless. The kind that remembers. It runs through the roots of the ancient trees and hums in the cracks of old castles, carrying memories like tiny lanterns into the dark. The few souls who remain, if they can still be called souls, do not speak. They drift through the quiet, unafraid. A small shape, maybe a spirit born of candy, maybe just light wanders the plains where grass no longer grows. It pauses before a broken sword half buried in the ground, its handle wrapped in vines. There is no sadness in its stillness, only reverence. The sword, dull and rusted, hums faintly not from power but from the echo of what it once stood for: heroism, hope, friendship. Nearby, the ruins of what was once the tree fort glow in the last rays of a fading sun. The tree itself stands hollow but proud, branches reaching toward the dim sky as though asking for one final story. The air around it is warm, gentle, filled with dust that glimmers like faint gold motes. Some say the tree dreams, too, that its roots, deep in the soil, still whisper the names of those who once lived within it. Finn, Jake, friends, laughter. All those simple words that held the weight of eternity. As night falls, the stars return, though fewer now, each one a little dimmer. They scatter themselves carefully across the heavens, like the last notes of a song being played too slowly to end. The constellations still tell the same old stories, heroes and monsters, life and death, love and loss, but they flicker less often, as though even the cosmos itself has grown weary of remembering. And yet in that quiet sky, something tender remains. When the wind moves across the plains, it carries faint sounds, whispers of old adventures, echoes of laughter, the gentle bark of a loyal friend. They drift like ghosts of sound, blending into the hum of the sleeping world. They do not haunt, they soothe. It's as if the entire world has become one long lullaby, sung not for the living, but for the dream itself. Underneath the earth, the last embers of power finally rest. The roots of the world cradle them gently, keeping them safe. The magic that once roared and raged has quieted into a pulse, slow, steady, eternal. If you placed your ear to the ground, you might hear it. The heartbeat of Ooo, soft and distant, like the rhythm of a sleeping child. Above, clouds drift low, their edges glowing faintly blue. A light mist settles over the landscape, wrapping every ruin, every stone, every sleeping creature in a soft veil. It's the world's final act of kindness, a blanket of calm laid over everything that ever lived, a promise that nothing has been forgotten. There's something achingly beautiful in this end. The way every element, fire, ice, candy, and slime, has blended together into harmony. The world that was once fractured by conflict now breathes as one. Its elements no longer war against each other. They rest together, unified in stillness. The land glows faintly with that balance, as though the spirit of Ooo itself has found peace at last. In the heart of the silence, where the boundaries between matter and dream begin to fade, the last glimmers of life begin to rise. Tiny lights drift upward from the soil, soft, colorful, endless. Each one carries something of the old world within it. The giggle of a candy child, the echo of a vampire song, the spark of a wizard's spell, the warmth of a loyal dog's heart. They rise slowly, weightless, forming ribbons of light that stretch toward the stars. They look like fireflies, but they are not. They are memories becoming light. The last fragments of stories surrendering to the void, not as loss, but as offering. Each one hums softly as it drifts higher, until the entire sky looks like a sea of glowing dust, a galaxy reborn from the ashes of Ooo. And then, for the first time in countless ages, the world is utterly still. The rivers no longer move, the wind no longer sings, the trees no longer breathe. But the silence is not empty. It is vast, full of the hum of something beyond comprehension, the peace that comes when everything that ever existed has fulfilled its purpose. In that silence, there's a pulse, a rhythm too slow for any heart, too vast for any being. It's the universe remembering itself. Ooo, at last, has returned where it began, not destroyed, but dissolved into the fabric of creation. For a moment, a very long moment, everything holds its breath. Then, like the final flicker of a candle, the light fades from the sky. The stars close their eyes. The land, the sea, the air, all fall into the same perfect stillness. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of time, a voice, faint and mechanical, hums a few soft notes of an old tune. It drifts like static through the cosmos, warm and fragile. It's not the end. It's the beginning of something even quieter. The last lullaby of magic, carried on the wind, whispering softly through the dark. The world sleeps now, and all is well. When the magic of Ooo finally settled into its quiet rhythm, the kingdoms that once shaped the world began to fade into memory. They did not fall to ruin in fire or battle. They simply drifted away, as softly as snow melting under morning light. Where each kingdom, once so alive with its own color, its own pulse, now rests in a kind of eternal stillness, not gone, but dreaming. The Candy Kingdom is the first to come to mind. Once a radiant mosaic of sugar and laughter, it now lies beneath a haze of golden dust. The candy streets, once sticky with the sweetness of endless festivals, are smooth and quiet. Lollipop lamps that once shimmered in pink and violet now glow faintly with the last of their light, humming softly in the wind. The peppermint walls of the castle have dulled into pastel hues, cracked gently at the edges like the surface of old porcelain. There is a kind of grace in this decay. The kingdom, which once thrummed with the endless experiments of Princess Bubblegum and the chaotic joy of its candy citizens, now feels serene. The echoes of their laughter still drift faintly through the air, not haunting but peaceful, like the memory of a dream you loved too much to forget. The sweetness of the place remains faint but warm, like sugar dissolving in tea. Even now, centuries after the last gumdrop slept, the ground still holds a faint scent of strawberries and vanilla. Inside the castle, vines of hardened caramel and soft moss twist together through the halls. The great laboratory is still filled with glass containers, some cracked, some filled with the faint shimmer of experiments long ended. On one desk lies an unfinished project, a tiny candy heart made of crystal, glowing faintly blue. No one knows what it was meant to do, but it still beats softly, once every few minutes, like the world itself is reminding us that it once lived here. Far away in the shadowed lands of the Ice Kingdom, silence takes on another shape. The glaciers stand high and endless, but their color has changed. The brilliant blues and whites of the past have softened into shades of pale lavender and silver. They glimmer faintly under a half-lit sky, each glacier reflecting the light of stars that no longer burn. The cold here feels kind now, less like a force of nature, and more like a gentle hand laid over the earth, keeping it preserved. The remains of the Ice King's tower lean slightly to one side, as if bowing to time itself. Its crown of frozen spires catches the faint moonlight and scatters it in 1,000 delicate directions. Inside, the corridors are filled with frost that sparkles faintly when touched by even the smallest glow. On a frozen wall, faint carvings remain, crude drawings, names, and small hearts etched by lonely hands. It's all that's left of Simon's strange joy, his desperate longing to belong. Deep within the tower, beneath layers of soft ice, lies the shattered remnant of the crown. The gems are dark now, their color drained, but when the wind passes through the chamber, a faint hum still rises from it, a lullaby, cracked and slow, like the last breath of a dream. The Ice Kingdom no longer feels lonely. It feels at peace. The madness that once ruled it has dissolved, leaving behind only memory, like snow gently covering the marks of footsteps. To the south, where once flames danced and roared, lies what was once the Fire Kingdom. The air there is heavy, but no longer hot. The lava fields have cooled into deep obsidian plains that shimmer with veins of red and orange, glowing like the slow heartbeat of an ember. The walls of the old citadel rise from the rock, black and smooth, their edges kissed with faint warmth. Inside the heart of that kingdom, the old flame throne still stands, not burning, but glowing softly. Its light flickers as though remembering what it once meant to blaze. The floor is covered in fine ash that glitters like stars, and when the faintest breeze moves through the halls, the ash dances, creating shapes that look like people. Fire elementals, reduced to silhouettes of memory, twirl for a few moments before fading again. They do not mourn. They simply move, following the rhythm of something deeper, something eternal. Where Princess Flame once ruled, the ground now hums faintly with a quiet warmth. The fire that burned so fiercely within her line did not die, it transformed. It softened into something steady, something enduring. The flame became the warmth that keeps the last life of Ooo from freezing completely. It is a gentle reminder that even the fiercest passions, when given time, can turn into tenderness. And beyond the ashes of fire lies the strange stillness of the slime kingdom. It was once a place of play, of endless movement, of life without shape or structure. But now the endless rivers of green and yellow have settled into pools of glassy calm. The surface shines like liquid jade, reflecting the sky's slow-turning colors. Nothing moves beneath it, yet the light ripples gently as though stirred by dreams instead of touch. The towers made of hardened slime have melted into elegant mound, smooth and rounded, resembling the dunes of another planet. Within those forms, faint bubbles are trapped, glowing faintly from within like captured memories. When the wind passes, those bubbles shimmer softly, lighting up the hills for a heartbeat before vanishing again. It's said that these bubbles contain echoes of voices, the laughter of the slime folk, their endless chatter and song, preserved forever in the silence. Each kingdom in its own way has become a shrine not to the people who built them, but to the stories they carried. The Candy Kingdom glows with sweetness turned to stillness. The Ice Kingdom hums with quiet redemption. The Fire Kingdom radiates with warmth remembered. And the Slime Kingdom mirrors the sky, as though keeping the reflection of all that once was alive. Even the air between them feels sacred now, as if the land itself is holding its breath. The distance between one kingdom and another no longer feels vast. It feels like the space between dreams, close, gentle, familiar. The world no longer divides itself by elements or rulers. It has become one vast, silent harmony, where every place echoes the same soft truth. All things that once burned brightly will one day rest. As we drift deeper into the quiet that has settled over Ooo, the silence of the kingdoms begins to feel less like an ending and more like a long, tender sigh. The world isn't empty, it's listening. Every grain of sand, every fallen petal, every ripple of wind feels aware of the slumber it has entered. The stillness is full of memory, as if the land itself dreams of what it once was. Near the heart of Ooo, where meadows once bloomed, with the colors of all four seasons, stands the remains of the tree fort. Once the home of Finn and Jake, it now rests in a peaceful state of surrender. Its branches have grown wide and low, heavy with time, and its leaves have turned a muted gold. The house built into it still stands, tilted slightly but strong. The windows glow faintly with the reflection of the distant sun, and through them one might almost see shapes moving. Inside, everything feels as though it's waiting. The couch, a little sunken and worn, still holds the imprint of two friends who laughed until dawn. A cracked mug sits on the table, beside an old sword whose blade has dulled, but whose handle gleams from years of touch. On the wall, drawings fade, adventures, doodles, maps of distant lands. They're all still there, but soft now, as though painted by moonlight instead of ink. In the corner, BMO sits quietly, surrounded by the gentle hum of static. The little console no longer glows as brightly as before, but a faint blue light pulses from its chest. Sometimes, in the deep hours of Oo's endless twilight, that light flickers to life and a soft melody drifts through the air. A lullaby, one that speaks of friendship, a beginning, of home. It's BMO's way of keeping the dream alive, of remembering what it felt like when laughter filled the fort and stars were watched from the roof. Outside, the meadow is calm. The grass sways, brushing gently against the roots of the old tree. Tiny white flowers bloom in the shadow of the fort. and fireflies move like drifting embers, forming soft constellations among the tall grass. The sound of the wind passing through the leaves carries a whisper, not words, but something that feels like meaning. The world is not speaking anymore, but it hums with quiet gratitude. Not far from there lies what was once the kingdom of glass. Once glittering and proud, it now stands in near invisible stillness. The glass towers, cracked and melted by centuries of wind and time, form elegant spires that catch the sunlight like shards of dream. They sing when the breeze passes through, a delicate, crystalline harmony that echoes across the plains. It's as though the air itself remembers the laughter of the glass people and carries it onward in music. Among those towers lies the glass castle, its heart fractured but still whole. Inside, fragments of the past shimmer like frozen raindrops suspended in air. The reflections shift constantly, replaying faint moments, dancers twirling in mirrored halls, a child tracing patterns on a window pane, someone waving goodbye to a figure walking away. None of them are ghosts, and none of them are real. Their memories caught in the loops of light, forever repeating their gentle stories until the world itself forgets to shine. Beyond the Glass Kingdom lies the remnants of the wildberry lands. The forest there still holds a scent of fruit and moss, though the trees stand still now, no longer whispering. The berries on the branches glow faintly from within, pulsing like sleepy hearts. When night falls, the forest lights up with a soft reddish hue, as if blushing under the gaze of the moon. It feels alive, not in motion, but in spirit. The creatures that once scurried through its shadows may be gone, yet their shapes linger in the patterns of leaves and bark. Each of these quiet realms holds a story not of loss, but of rest. The people of Ooo lived loudly. They loved, they fought, they dreamed, and in their stillness, the world finally reflects them as something eternal. The Candy Kingdom sleeps under its sugar clouds. The Ice Kingdom hums its lullaby beneath the frozen stars. The Fire Kingdom glows from deep within the earth. The Glass and Wildberry Land shimmer like faint memories of joy. Together, they make up the last heartbeat of Ooo, slow, steady, and full of peace. And yet, there are faint signs of life, still small, soft things that continue moving through this quiet age. A flower blooming in a place no sunlight should reach. A tiny bird whose feathers glow faintly, as if it carries within it the last sparks of magic. Sometimes faint lights drift through the night sky like fireflies or souls, or maybe just remnants of enchantments still lingering in the air. The world hasn't died. It has become something else, something gentler, slower, more dreamlike. It's as though Ooo itself has chosen to stay awake, even as everything within it sleeps, watching over the kingdoms, listening to the echoes of its own story, holding space for everything that once was and everything that might still come. In the far reaches of the world, beyond the frozen ruins and the hushed meadows, lies the desert where the remnants of the Rock Kingdom rest. Once its cliffs had sung with the rhythm of stone the deep, patient music of the earth itself. Now those cliffs are hollow, carved open by centuries of wind and quiet. The rock people, whose bodies were etched by time and shaped by endurance, have long since turned to dust, their forms merging back into the landscape, yet their presence remains. At sunset, the rocks glow faintly from within, as if remembering the spark of their old souls. When the desert wind passes through the canyons, it hums through the cracks like a soft chorus, a sound that might once have been their voices, still singing to one another across the wide, sleeping world. The sound isn't mournful. It's gentle, circular, endlessly returning to itself like waves breaking softly on the shore. It feels as though even the silence here has learned how to hum along. Far beyond the desert lies a coastline that once belonged to the Water Kingdom, though now it's hard to say where the sea ends and the sky begins. The ocean has grown still, its waves moving in long, slow breaths that barely disturb the sand. Once merfolk and aquatic creatures filled these waters, singing stories that echoed through coral palaces and moonlit caves. Now only the faint shimmer of phosphorescent light lingers beneath the surface. The glow moves like drifting dreams, tracing soft patterns along the seafloor. The coral towers have bleached white, but within their hollow hearts, pearls still pulse faintly with light. It's said that each pearl holds a memory of the sea, not just sights or sounds, but emotions, joy, longing, peace. The ocean, in its stillness, seems content to cradle these feelings forever, unchanging. At night, the reflection of the stars glimmers across the water, and for a moment, it feels as though the sea is awake, remembering the sky it once mirrored so dearly. Further inland, the ruins of the Cloud Kingdom float low, their forms dim and heavy. Once they hovered high above the earth, made of vapor and laughter and constant motion. But time, even in the sky, asks for rest. The clouds have settled, drifting lazily at the horizon. They glow from within, faint and silver, reflecting the last whispers of sunlight that still reach them. From a distance, they look like islands in the air, quiet sanctuaries drifting on invisible tides. Inside the soft mists, structures still hang suspended. Homes, bridges, delicate spirals of condensed air that once sang with the joy of flight. They no longer move, but they still hum faintly when touched by a breeze, as if remembering the feeling of wind beneath them. It's said that if you close your eyes there, you can still hear faint laughter, playful, free and fading. The echoes of the cloud people sound like rain beginning to fall, but never reaching the ground. Beneath all these sleeping realms, the earth itself dreams. In the deep, quiet tunnels left by the Mole Kingdom, bioluminescent fungi glow like constellations buried underground. The air is thick and still, filled with the scent of minerals and damp soil. These caverns once echoed with digging, chattering, and the metallic rhythm of tools striking stone. Now only the slow drip of water remains, a patient metronome marking time's passage. Yet something about these tunnels feels alive. The roots of ancient trees reach down through the ceiling, their tips glowing faintly, pulsing in time with the earth's slow heartbeat. It's as if the world, though emptied of voices, still carries the hum of all who have ever lived within it. The moles, the candy people, the elementals, all their energy has flowed back into the planet, becoming part of the song beneath the soil. There's a strange beauty in this silence. The kingdoms no longer compete or thrive or clash. They exist together now, bound not by walls or rulers, but by the soft rhythm of stillness. The world has become a single, vast memory, one long exhale after millennia of stories. And within that memory, there are small miracles. In the ruins of a candy house, a seed sprouts through a crack in the floor. In the heart of an old lava trench, a single glowing moth flutters against the stone. In a puddle of melted ice, a reflection flickers not of what is, but of what was. These are Oo's quiet heartbeats, proof that endings are never absolute. The silence hums with potential, the way the sky glows just before dawn. For those who might wander here, if anyone still can, the air feels thick with presence. Every sound, every glint of light feels meaningful, as if the world itself is trying to tell its final story, one too big and too tender for words. It's the story of life, learning how to rest. And perhaps that's what makes Oo's ending so beautiful. It isn't a fall or a disappearance. It's a slow transformation, a soft return to stillness. The kingdoms have not been destroyed. They become eternal, not through power or preservation, but through peace. The Candy Kingdom's sweetness, the Fire Kingdom's warmth, the Ice Kingdom's quiet clarity, they all blend into one shared silence that fills the world like music only the earth can hear. Somewhere among these silent realms, the last light flickers from the horizon, a twilight that never quite fades. The world glows softly beneath it, half asleep, half dreaming. It's as though Ooo itself has decided that after all its chaos and color and song, it has earned this rest, this chance to finally exhale and listen to its own quiet heartbeat. High above the sleeping plains, where the air shimmers faintly with the last remnants of magic, the world seems to hold itself in a timeless embrace. The light never quite fades, yet never fully returns. It hovers a long, endless dusk that wraps every kingdom in amber calm. In this half-light, Oo's shapes blur softly at the edges as though even reality is beginning to rest. In the distance, the remnants of the nightosphere hang like a fading bruise against the sky. Once a realm of endless chaos and torment, its gates now stand open and unguarded, the swirling reds and blacks within muted to a dim purple haze. The cries of trapped souls have long fallen silent. What remains is an eerie stillness, punctuated by the faint hum of energy slowly dissolving back into the void. The air there carries no malice, now only exhaustion. It's as if even the demons have grown weary of their own darkness and chosen sleep over struggle. Marceline's old domain, perched at the edge of this fading horizon, still stands. Her house, the one she once filled with songs and shadow, now rests in peaceful disarray. The windows are cracked, but sunlight filters through them like liquid gold. A bass guitar leans against the wall, its strings long since rusted. Yet when the wind brushes past, they hum faintly, an echo of songs that once held the world's sadness. Sometimes, when the air grows particularly still, that hum sounds almost like a melody, low, sweet, and trembling. A song that remembers everything, the laughter, the heartbreak, the countless sunsets shared between friends and foes alike. It is the lullaby of Oo's twilight, the final rhythm of a world learning how to sleep. To the east, where grass once rolled endlessly beneath bright skies, the remnants of the grasslands ripple faintly with color. The soil has grown rich with memory, each blade of grass a whisper of what came before. The air smells faintly of rain and sunlight, though no storms pass anymore. It's said that beneath those fields lies the resting place of the heroes who once walked this world, not buried, but absorbed into the land itself. Finn, Jake, Marceline, Bubblegum, and countless others, their energy flows through the roots, the rivers, and the sky. The world they saved, fought for, and loved now carries their essence in everything that remains. Ooo is not haunted by them. It is them. Every gust of wind through the trees feels like Jake's laughter. Every soft shimmer of twilight carries Bubblegum's determination. The reflection of the stars and puddles feels like Marceline's songs, and the warmth that lingers even after sunset that must be Finn. The last ember of heroism turned to peace. Even far beneath, where the ruins of the old mushroom war still lie buried, the quiet has softened the scars. Machines once rusted in defiance now rest under carpets of moss. Cities of concrete and steel, long abandoned, have become coral reefs of stone and vine. Nature, whatever form of it still breathes, has reclaimed its rhythm. The sky, once fractured by pollution and war, has long since healed, its colors blending into a permanent twilight wash of lavender and pale gold. In some corners of Ooo, faint remnants of technology still flicker small, glowing panels, half buried in dirt, their light blinking slowly like a pulse. They hum faintly, speaking in forgotten languages. These echoes are not warnings or commands anymore. They are lullabies, patterns repeating without purpose, soothing the soil that once trembled beneath their power. The world has learned how to forgive itself. And so the silent kingdoms continue their endless sleep. No war, no rule, no hunger, only stillness. Each realm reflects the other like facets of one great dream. The Candy Kingdom glows faintly in its sugared slumber. The Fire Kingdom warms the stones beneath it with a quiet heartbeat. The Ice Kingdom hums with eternal light, and far below the slime and rocklands shimmer with the glow of preservation. Above them all, the Cloud Kingdom drifts softly, its shapes ever-changing, its edges dissolving into the sky. Everywhere you look, there's harmony into the hush. Even the faint movements of wind seem deliberate, slow, mindful, reverent. The stars above Ooo burn faintly, as though dimming themselves out of respect for the world's rest. The constellations that once guided travelers now look like faint sketches, fading with every passing century until only the memory of their light remains. And perhaps that's how it was always meant to be. From the chaos of creation to the rise of kingdoms, from war to wonder, everything that lived in Ooo was part of one long breath in and out, expansion and rest. The silent kingdoms mark the end of that breath, the pause between worlds, the moment before the next awakening. If you stood there now on one of those quiet hills under the unending dusk, you'd hear almost nothing. Just the faint hum of wind through the grass, the distant murmur of the ocean, the rhythm of the world's slow heart. You might feel something too, a warmth rising from the ground, a kind of recognition, as if the earth itself remembers you, as though Ooo, in its final dream, knows that someone is still listening. And in that moment, standing in the stillness of all things, you might realize that this silence isn't sad. It's sacred. The world hasn't ended. It has only fallen asleep. Every stone, every breeze, every flicker of light is part of a single, gentle lullaby that stretches across the ages. The song of peace after all the noise. The quiet kingdom of memory. The slow, eternal sigh of Ooo. When the world began to fall quiet, and the kingdoms faded into their long sleep, there were still a few who walked beneath the twilight skies of Ooo, the last heroes, wandering not in search of battles, but in search of peace. Their stories are not of conquest or rescue anymore, but of remembering, of watching, and of gently saying goodbye to everything they once loved. Finn was one of the last to remain awake. No longer the boy who charged headfirst into danger. He had grown to something gentler, quieter, a man who carried both the light of adventure and the ache of understanding. His sword, once bright and sharp, rested now against his back like an old friend that no longer needed to be drawn. Time had softened him, but not dulled his heart. His eyes still carried that spark, not of battle, but of wonder. He wandered through the sleeping kingdoms, not to awaken them, but to listen, to hear the faint hum of life still echoing beneath the silence. When he passed through the Candy Kingdom, he would pause before the palace gates, running his fingers over the cracked peppermint walls. Sometimes he would find tiny flowers sprouting between the sugar bricks, and he would smile, whispering quiet thanks to Bubblegum for the life she had built, a life that had outlasted them all. At night, when the stars shimmered faintly over the frozen peaks, Finn would make camp beneath the shadow of the old ice tower. The air was cold, but gentle now, like the memory of snow rather than its sting. He would sit near a small fire, the flickering light reflecting in his eyes, and take out a small device wrapped in cloth BMO. The little console, worn and cracked from age, would hum softly when Finn turned it on. Its face would flicker to life, Not as bright as it once was, but still warm, still kind. "Hey, Finn," BMO would say, its voice glitching ever so slightly. "Did you have a good day?" And Finn would smile, his breath curling in the cold air. "Yeah, buddy," he'd whisper. "A good day." Sometimes BMO would sing. Not loudly, not with the energy it once had, but softly, as if it were singing to the stars themselves. Finn would lean back and listen, his eyes half closed, feeling the world around him breathe in rhythm with the melody. In that sound there was everything the laughter of friends long gone, the warmth of Jake's fur against his side, the echo of countless adventures beneath the sun. Jake's presence was still there, too, in ways words couldn't capture. Finn often felt him in the wind, in the way it moved playfully through the grass, or brushed against his shoulder as though nudging him along. Sometimes, when he slept beside the fire, he dreamed of the two of them lying on clouds again, watching shapes drift across the sky. In those dreams, Jake would laugh, tell him a joke that didn't quite make sense, and say, "Man, this place got quiet, huh?" And Finn would nod, not sad, not lonely, just peaceful. When he woke, the world would feel softer. He'd whisper a quiet good morning to the air, as if Jake might be listening, and maybe he was. In a world where everything is memory, even love can echo forever. Finn's journey wasn't one of discovery anymore. It was one of farewell. He visited every place that had once shaped him. He walked the shores where he'd fought the ocean's waves, the forests where he'd met old friends and stranger spirits. He returned to the ruins of the tree fort, its branches heavy with vines, its windows clouded with dust. Inside, the air smelled faintly of wood and rain. He found his old hat there, the one with the little ears worn and yellowed with age. He picked it up, brushed it off, and held it for a long time. Then he set it on the shelf beside an old mug, a drawing of him and Jake, and a faded note written in Bubblegum's careful hand. He didn't read it. He didn't have to. The words were already part of him. BMO followed him everywhere after that, tucked in his bag or walking beside him in the shape of a tiny robot, its steps soft against the soil. They didn't speak much anymore. They didn't need to. Each night, Finn would look up at the sky, and BMO would hum a tune from the old days, something simple, something beautiful. Together, they kept the rhythm of Ooo alive. There were others, two old heroes in their own corners of the world. Marceline, for instance, who had long since stopped wandering between realms. She'd found her quiet at last, in a valley where twilight never ended. Her house, half swallowed by ivy and time, sat beside a mirror-still lake. She spent her days strumming a weathered guitar and humming to the rippling water. Her songs no longer carried the sting of heartbreak, only peace. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, the melody would drift across miles of empty land, and Finn would pause in his walk to listen. He'd close his eyes and smile, recognizing the sound instantly. It wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. The kind that comes, say, from knowing something beautiful had lived and still lived, even if only in echoes. In those moments, Ooo didn't feel empty. It felt eternal. Like every story that had ever been told was still whispering softly beneath the soil, still flickering in the twilight. The heroes hadn't vanished. They had become part of the quiet part of the dream. As Finn wandered farther from the lands he once knew, the landscape began to change. The bright, colorful chaos of Oo's youth had faded into something softer, more dreamlike. The ground shimmered faintly beneath the dim light, covered in moss that glowed a quiet green, as if the planet itself was breathing in its sleep. There were no cities now, no armies, no cries for help. Only the faint hum of wind and the sigh of rivers that no longer rushed, but drifted lazily toward nowhere. Finn sometimes met others, not people, not quite spirits either, but fragments, echoes of beings who had once been. he would find a flickering image of Flame Princess dancing in the air beside the ashes of her old kingdom, or the faint silhouette of the Duke of Nuts laughing to himself beneath the roots of a dying tree. These weren't ghosts in the sorrowful sense. They were memories, softly replaying themselves like dreams the world didn't want to forget. He never disturbed them. He simply watched, smiled, and passed by. Once he found the ruins of the Fire Kingdom itself cooled into black glass. The heat had long faded, leaving the walls smooth and fragile. At its heart stood the great throne, cracked and empty, surrounded by molten rivers turned to obsidian mirrors. Finn could see his reflection in them, older, calmer, eyes that had seen too much and loved it all anyway. He knelt and placed his hand on the ground, whispering a simple thank you for the warmth, the lessons, the light that once burned so brightly it could melt the stars. Further north, the ice tower was little more than a jagged sculpture of frozen mist. Inside, the air hummed faintly, as if still remembering the laughter of a king who'd once lost himself to the crown. Finn stayed there for a long time. He didn't speak. He just sat by the fractured throne and let the cold wrap around him. He could almost hear the sound of Simon's voice, tired, kind, full of regret and love. A tiny glimmer appeared then, not from the ice, but from a small shard resting on the floor. It was the last piece of Simon's crown, dull but still humming softly. Finn picked it up and turned it in his hand. It no longer had power, just memory. He slipped it into his bag beside BMO, saying quietly, "You were good in the end." The heroes of Ooo weren't fighting monsters anymore. Their final quests were quiet ones to remember, to forgive, and to let go. Marceline's songs were not about loss anymore, but about stillness. Peppermint Butler, long since freed from his obsessions, had dissolved into the soil beneath the Candy Kingdom, nourishing the earth like the root of a long-forgotten spell. Princess Bubblegum's old lab had become a forest, the walls covered in vines, her inventions taken over by nature. Yet somehow her presence lingered there, like logic intertwined with life. Sometimes Finn thought he could hear her voice in the wind, murmuring equations that had become lullabies. And then there was BMO still singing, still recording, still telling stories to no one and everyone. Finn had once asked BMO why it kept singing when the world had gone so quiet. BMO had blinked and said, "Because stories don't stop when no one's listening. They just become dreams." Finn never forgot that. Every night, when the stars turned faint and the horizon shimmered between blue and gray, Finn would make a small fire, sit beside it, and tell BMO a story. Not a grand one, sometimes just a memory. The time he and Jake pretended to be detectives. The time they rode a giant goldfish across the desert. The time they sat on a cliff watching the sun fall and didn't say a word because they didn't have to. And when Finn's voice grew softer, BMO would hum the melody of that story, turning it into a song that would drift gently across the empty fields. Maybe the wind carried those songs somewhere. Maybe not. Didn't matter. What mattered was that they were sung. There was a kind of holiness to the stillness of Ooo now, a beauty in its decay. The kingdoms that had once fought and sparkled with energy were now sanctuaries of peace. Even the nightosphere had quieted, its chaos tamed into reflection. The great portals had closed, and the beings who once crossed them had found rest. Finn sometimes wondered if this was how the world was always meant to end, not in fire, not in darkness, but in peace. He had lived through so much, creation, chaos, rebirth, but this gentle fade into memory felt right. And yet, deep inside, he still felt something stirring, not sadness, but purpose. There was still one more thing left to do. Not a battle, not a mission. Something deeper, something only a true hero could face, when the story itself was reaching its final page. So one morning, as the first light crept across the gray horizon, Finn stood, packed his small bag, and whispered to BMO, "Let's go see what's left." BMO nodded, its little screen glowing faintly. "Okay, Finn. One more adventure." They began their journey across what remained of Ooo, not in haste, but with the unhurried rhythm of two travelers who had learned to move at the world's breathing pace. The sky was pale and gentle, like old parchment, and the sun shone dimly, as if it too had grown weary of burning. Grasses swayed in long golden waves that whispered of centuries gone by. Each hill they climbed revealed a land that had softened with age, its sharpness melted into calm. They passed through the remnants of the Candy Kingdom, where sugar had turned to dust and the air smelled faintly of honey and earth. The peppermint towers had crumbled into spiraled stones, and vines had woven through what used to be the castle's grand doorway. Inside, the walls were covered in blooming fungi that glowed softly, casting a pale pink light across the floor. BMO hopped down from Finn's shoulder and wandered through the ruins. "Princess Bubblegum's magic feels different now," it said quietly. "It's like she's still here, but she's melted into everything." Finn nodded. "Yeah," he said, running his hand across the moss-covered wall. "She always wanted to understand how life worked. Maybe she became part of it in the end." He could almost imagine her there, not as a ruler or a scientist, but as a quiet hum beneath the soil, her mind still tending to the delicate balance of things. The kingdom she built had become a garden. Her logic had become nature's calm persistence. Further along the path, they reached the remains of the tree fort. It was still standing, though barely. The once lush green leaves were now silver gray, and the wooden walls were worn smooth by time and wind. The air carried a faint echo of laughter, Jake's laughter, rolling out across the empty land like a memory that refused to fade. Finn placed his hand on the trunk. It felt warm, as if the tree itself remembered him. He could see in the faint grooves of the bark carvings he and Jake had made long ago, silly little faces, initials, tally marks, from days they'd counted without reason. He sat down beneath the old tree and for a while said nothing. BMO settled beside him, quiet too. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of old voices, gentle echoes of friendship, of pancakes shared, of lazy afternoons and impossible adventures. "Do you think Jake's still out there?" Finn finally asked. His voice wasn't sad, just curious, like a child asking a question to the wind. BMO looked up at him, the screen flickering softly. "Maybe not out there," it said, "but maybe in here." It pointed to Finn's chest. "Heroes never lose each other. They just become part of each other's stories." Finn smiled faintly. That answer felt right. The world had changed, but the bond that had defined it, love, loyalty, laughter, remained untouched. Maybe Jake wasn't a spirit floating in the stars. Maybe he was the warmth that still lingered whenever Finn smiled at the horizon. As the day passed, they continued walking. The land stretched farther, quieter. In the distance, Finn could see the faint silhouette of the mountain of fire, now dormant and calm. Around it, strange crystalline structures had grown, shimmering faintly as though reflecting the last remnants of magic. That night, they camped beside a dry riverbed. BMO played a soft tune on its little speakers, a melody Finn recognized, as one Jake used to hum when the world still felt new. The sound drifted across the open air, merging with the soft rustle of grass and the faint hum of distant creatures. Finn leaned back, watching the stars blink slowly above. They seemed dimmer now, fewer, but there was something comforting about that. The universe was quieting down, yes, but not dying, just resting, as all things must. "BMO," he whispered, "do you ever think about how it all began? The Mushroom War, the magic, everything that came after?" BMO paused. "Sometimes," it said. But I think beginnings and endings are the same. They just wear different clothes." Finn chuckled softly. "That's pretty wise." "I learned from you," BMO replied, voice warm and small. Finn closed his eyes. The breeze was cool, and the stars looked like tiny embers floating in a dark sea. He thought about all the friends he'd known, Princess Bubblegum's fierce brilliance, Marceline's haunting songs, Flame Princess's firelight, Jake's laughter that could chase away any shadow. He thought about the monsters they'd fought, the worlds they'd crossed, and how, in the end, everything came down to this quiet, a quiet that felt earned. And somewhere deep inside, he realized that the ending of Ooo wasn't really a loss. It was a transformation. The kingdoms had fallen silent, but their stories had seeped into the soil, the rivers, the stars. The heroes were gone, but their courage was woven into the very air. Every gust of wind, every glimmer of moonlight carried a fragment of what once was. As the night deepened, BMO's song faded into a low hum. Finn whispered, "Jake, wherever you are, I hope you're laughing." Then he closed his eyes and let the silence take him, not into sleep, but into a gentle kind of remembering. The fire burned low. The stars shimmered faintly, and for the first time in a long while, the world seemed perfectly at peace. When dawn arrived, it came softly, not as a burst of light, but as a slow exhale. The world was pale gold, brushed in shades of lavender and silver. Finn rose and looked across the endless plain, his cloak moving with the wind like a quiet flag of memory. The air was still cool, but it carried the scent of earth after rest, like something waking from a long dream. They kept walking. Each step felt lighter, though Finn's body carried the weight of 100 lives lived. He wasn't the boy who had once swung his sword through forests and dungeons. He was something gentler now, a storyteller, a keeper of what remained. His sword still hung at his side, but he hadn't drawn it in years. It was not a weapon anymore. It was a relic of a time when the world still needed fighting. As they crossed into the Valley of Echoes, the air shimmered faintly, bending sound in strange ways. Every word spoken there repeated itself, softer and softer, until it sounded like a sigh. Finn and BMO didn't talk much, they didn't need to. But every so often, BMO would hum a little tune, and the valley would hum it back, stretching the notes into something vast and ancient. And in the distance stood a crumbled stone archway. Finn remembered it, a fragment of the old magic man's domain, long abandoned. The stones were covered in blue moss now, and tiny flowers grew from the cracks. Finn ran his hand across one of the broken pillars and felt the faint pulse of old magic, thin as a heartbeat in its last moments. "Everything fades," he murmured. "Yes," BMO said, watching the light shift between the stones. "But fading isn't ending. It's how things say goodbye." Finn smiled faintly. "You're full of good lines today." "I've had a long time to practice," BMO replied, "and if it could blush, it might have." As the day passed, they reached the edge of what had once been the land of the dead. There was no gate now, no glowing doorway, just a calm, endless plain where mist drifted low over the ground. It was quiet in a way that made the air feel sacred. Finn stood at the edge for a long while, feeling something familiar stir in him. Not fear, not sorrow, but peace. He thought of all the souls who might still linger there, friends, enemies, creatures whose names had been forgotten. He bowed his head and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't clear who he was thanking. Maybe everyone. Maybe the world itself. BMO placed its small hand on Finn's arm. "Do you think they can hear you?" "I don't know," Finn said softly. "But I think the world listens to kindness, even when no one else does." They camped again that night beneath a sky that glowed faintly green. The auroras that once danced above Ooo still flickered now and then, though weaker, like the last breaths of an old song. BMO rested by the fire, its screen displaying an image of Jake, smiling and waving. Finn watched it quietly, and the corners of his mouth lifted. BMO, he said after a while, when it's your time to rest, what will you do? BMO looked at the fire. I think I'll sing one last song, it said softly. Then I'll turn off, not forever, just until someone needs me again. Because that's how stories work, right? They sleep between tellings. Finn nodded slowly. Yeah, that sounds right. There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that happens between old friends who no longer need words to understand one another. The crackling of the fire was enough. The slow rhythm of the wind was enough. Later that night, as the fire dimmed to embers, Finn looked up at the stars. He noticed one shining brighter than the rest, golden and steady. It reminded him of the time Jake told him that stars were just friends who got tired of walking and decided to rest in the sky. Maybe you're up there now, Finn whispered, watching, laughing. And for just a heartbeat, the stars seemed to flicker as if winking back. He lay back, eyes heavy, mind full of warmth. The old adventures ran through him like dreams, the treasure hunts, the cosmic journeys, the laughter that echoed through the forests and caves. He didn't miss them in the way one misses what's gone. He carried them every adventure, every mistake, every moment of joy and pain. They had shaped him into something the world could finally rest beside. As dawn crept in again, Finn stirred and smiled. The sky had softened to rose and blue, and the wind carried with it a faint-tuned BMO song, rising gently with the light. The world wasn't over, not yet. It was simply folding itself into a long, peaceful pause, and Finn, the last hero of Ooo, walked onward, not searching for glory or truth, but simply to be there when the final story settled into silence. For that was his truest calling now, not to fight, but to witness, not to change, but to remember. And as the sun rose higher, spreading its warmth across the quiet land, the last hero smiled and kept walking toward whatever dream waited just beyond the horizon. The day began with music. Not loud or sudden, but soft like the first ripple that touches a still pond. The sound drifted through the pale morning air, curling around stones and flowers, carrying something gentle and ancient. It was BMO's. Finn had woken before sunrise, as he often did, and found BMO sitting on a rock near the edge of a shallow stream. The little robot's screen glowed faintly in the early light, its round face smiling as it hummed a melody so simple that it felt eternal. Finn didn't speak. He just sat nearby, listening. The song wasn't words at first. It was hums and tones, soft beeps, gentle digital murmurs that blended with the sound of running water. The rhythm swayed like breathing. It carried the pulse of something much older than both of them. And as Finn listened, he realized it wasn't just a tune. It was memory sound shaped by the history of everything they'd lived through. When BMO finally began to sing, the words were quiet, almost whispered. I remember a house made of branches and sky, where laughter was stored in the floorboards. I remember a dog who taught me to dream, and a boy who became the world. Finn's chest tightened. He didn't move. He didn't want to break the spell of the morning. BMO continued, its voice bright but steady, as if powered by something deeper than electricity. When kingdoms fell, and the stars still shone, and the grass kept growing over stone. When the songs grew quiet, I stayed awake to keep the dream from closing. The song carried out across the plain, slipping between the low hills and trees that had grown from forgotten seeds. It felt alive, not just sung to the world, but sung with it. Birds stirred. The breeze joined in, brushing through the tall grass like an unseen chorus. Even the faint hum of the earth seemed to harmonize. Finn smiled through the ache in his chest. You've been working on that one a while, huh? BMO turned, screen flickering softly. Since before Jake went to the stars, I didn't know how to finish it until now." "What changed?" Finn asked. "You stopped looking for the end," BMO said simply. "And that made room for the song to finish itself." Finn laughed quietly. "Guess you're smarter than both of us ever were." BMO tilted its head. "Not smarter, just full of stories." They spent that morning beside the stream, adding verses together. Finn would hum a few notes, and BMO would twist them into melodies. The lyrics weren't planned. They came like dreams, fragments of old memories, reshaped into something that felt both nostalgic and new. One verse was about the Candy Kingdom, how its walls once sparkled with sugar light, and how its people danced to the rhythm of joy and curiosity. Another told of the Ice King's lonely heart, thawed by love, and of the way his crown finally grew quiet when his soul found peace. They sang about the stars that used to fall into the ocean and turn into jellyfish, about the first snail that waved to them from every adventure, about the time they built a raft just to see how far the river would take them, before realizing the current always looped them home. Each memory became a verse, and each verse folded into the next, with the slow, dreamlike rhythm of an old lullaby. At one point, Finn noticed that the stream was glowing faintly beneath them. The water shimmered with soft blues and golds, as if responding to BMO's music. He leaned closer, eyes wide. "Hey, look," he whispered. "The water's singing, too." BMO giggled a small, delighted sound. "It's been listening for a long time. I think it's finally singing back." Finn let his fingers trail through the glowing current and was warm, alive, humming like a heartbeat. He realized then that magic hadn't completely vanished from Ooo. It had just gone quiet, waiting for something pure enough to call it again. And BMO's song, that small, hopeful melody, was the key. All around them, the land seemed to awaken slightly. Flowers swayed as though caught in a soft rhythm. A faint glimmer rose from the grass like morning dew touched by starlight. It was as if the song itself was sewing together the threads of the world's last dream, pulling everything into harmony one final time. Finn lay back in the grass, hands behind his head, eyes half closed. The melody flowed over him, gentle as sleep. "Hey, BMO," he said quietly. "You ever think songs are alive? Like they're born, grow, and someday they fade?" BMO thought for a moment, the music still drifting softly from its speaker. "Maybe. But even when they fade, they leave something behind. A feeling. That's how songs keep living inside people who remember." "Then this one's gonna live forever," Finn said. BMO smiled. "That's the idea." The two friends stayed there for hours, singing and listening, letting the music fill the spaces words could never reach. It didn't matter that no one else could hear it. The world itself was the audience, ancient, patient, and finally at peace. And in that moment, as the notes floated into the quiet sky, Ooo felt alive again. Not with magic, not with power, but with love. As the day wandered on, the melody took on a new shape, slower, deeper, threaded with the kind of quiet that only comes when the heart has no more need to rush. BMO sat cross-legged on the rock, its small fingers strumming at invisible strings, its voice weaving through the air like a lullaby for the world itself. Finn watched the clouds drift above them, each one gliding so slowly it felt like time had decided to take a nap. The song filled the spaces between thought and memory. And in those pauses, Finn began to see things, not visions exactly, but echoes. He saw the tree fort when it was young, leaves full and green, the sunlight pouring through like melted gold. He saw himself and Jake sitting on the porch, legs swinging, laughing over something silly. He saw BMO too smaller, newer, dancing around in circles, pretending to be a robot detective. Those memories didn't hurt anymore. They were warm, like old photographs, touched by sunlight. BMO changed the tune again, now lighter, playful, with hints of those early I remember when Finn tried to bake a pie and set the kitchen on fire, BMO sang cheerfully. And Jake said, "Don't worry, bud. We'll just call it volcano pie." Finn chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "Hey, that pie wasn't that bad." "It was very bad," BMO replied without hesitation. But its voice was full of laughter. They both laughed, and for a moment it felt like the world hadn't aged at all, like everything was still possible, and tomorrow still had surprises waiting. But beneath that joy was something else, something gentler. BMO's song was slowly becoming a goodbye. Not a sad one, but a necessary one, like a sunset that knows the stars are waiting. As the light shifted toward evening, Finn began to hum along, his voice low and steady. The two melodies intertwined, his human tone warm and imperfect, BMO's mechanical hum pure and crystalline. Together they created something beautiful, the sound of friendship carried through every version of time. The grass around them rustled softly, bending in rhythm. Fireflies began to appear, their tiny bodies flickering to the beat. Finn had seen 1,000 magical things in his life, but this simple harmony between himself, BMO, and the quiet land felt like the truest magic of all. When the song came to a pause, Finn sat up, gazing out across the plain. "You know," he said softly, "I think you're right, BMO. Maybe songs are dreams that don't stop when we wake up." BMO looked up at him, screen glowing with a calm blue. "Yes. And that's why I keep singing, so no one forgets how to dream." The words settled deep in Finn's chest. He thought of all the songs they had heard in their adventures, Marceline's haunting ballads, the lullabies of the sky witches, even the nonsense jingles Jake used to hum when he was bored. Every one of them had carried a piece of life, of connection. And now, here in this quiet twilight of the world, BMO was carrying them all, keeping their echoes alive. Finn took a slow breath and picked up a small stick from the ground. He began to draw in the dirt lines and circles, mountains and stars, tiny figures of himself and Jake, a Princess Bubblegum, a Marceline, a BMO standing at the center with music radiating out in waves. BMO leaned over to look. "What's that, Finn?" "Our story, Finn. The way I see it. All the places, all the faces, and right in the middle, you." BMO blinked. "Me?" "Yeah," Finn said, smiling. "You were always the heart of it. You remembered what we forgot. You kept us together." For a long while, BMO didn't answer. Its screen flickered faintly, as if processing the weight of those words. Then it said quietly, "I just wanted everyone to be happy." "And you did," Finn replied. "You really did." The sky deepened into shades of violet, and the first stars began to peek through. BMO started another song, slower now, softer. The kind of tune that sounded like it belonged to both endings and beginnings. Finn closed his eyes and listened. The words floated through the cooling air. "When laughter sleeps and light grows dim, I'll hum the world awake again. When no one's left to hear or see, the dream will hum itself through me." It was beautiful in the simplest way. No grand promises, no fanfare, just a gentle truth that even when everything else had faded, something small and kind would remain to hum the universe into one more breath. And as the song went on, Finn realized that BMO's voice wasn't alone anymore. The wind had joined in, whispering through the grass, and somewhere in the distance, water echoed the melody in faint ripples. The world itself was singing. As twilight deepened, the land seemed to breathe in rhythm with BMO's song. The horizon shimmered with that faint, silvery glow that sometimes appears just before the stars begin their watch. Finn and BMO sat quietly together, their campfire nothing more than a soft ring of orange among the tall grass. The melody had changed again. It had slowed to a near whisper, every note stretching and fading like the echo of a dream. BMO's voice was steady, but beneath it was something more, a pulse, almost like a heartbeat. The sound was not mechanical. It felt alive, gentle, and real. Finn listened with his eyes closed. He could hear Jake's laugh in the low hums, Bubblegum's precision in the melody's order, Marceline's ache in the longer notes, and the wonder of countless lives in between. It was as if BMO's song had gathered the spirits of Ooo itself and given them a final way to speak. He opened his eyes again and looked at BMO, who now sat perfectly still, its screen glowing with faint light patterns, waves of color rising and fading like tides. "You okay, little buddy?" Finn asked softly. BMO nodded, though its voice came out quieter than usual. "Yes, the song's getting big. I can feel it moving through everything, like it's trying to remember itself." "Remember itself?" Finn repeated. "Yes," BMO said. "Songs don't end, Finn. They just return to where they came from, like how rain goes back to the sky." Finn smiled. "You really have gotten wise." BMO tilted its head, mimicking a humble shrug. "I had good teachers." A comfortable silence stretched between them. The air smelled faintly of dew and fading smoke. The stars began to blink awake, one by one, scattered across the sky like memories finding their way home. Finn reached into his bag and pulled out the shard of Simon's crown, the one he had kept since the ice tower. It no longer hummed with cold, but under the firelight, it caught the glow of BMO's song. "You think he'd hear this?" Finn murmured. "I think everyone can," BMO said simply, "even if they've become stars." Finn turned the shard over in his hand and placed it gently in the grass beside BMO. The light from BMO's screen reflected in it, turning the shard's dull gray into a tiny mirror of the night sky. The reflection of the fire and stars seemed to move in time with the music. For a moment, Finn imagined all the people who had been part of Ooo, not as ghosts, but as threads of color woven to the air around them. Each verse of BMO's song seemed to make them shimmer a faint outline of Flame Princess's firelight, Marceline's bass chords curling through the sky, Bubblegum's careful hum resonating from the soil. It was as if the song was calling them home. BMO's voice grew softer. "I wrote this part for Jake," it said quietly, "but I think it's for everyone now." Then BMO began to sing again. "When the river forgets its song, and the trees no longer sway, I'll hum their stories back to them, and help the world remember its way." The words settled in the air like falling leaves. Finn's throat tightened. He watched the stars shimmer more brightly, and he could have sworn that for a heartbeat, one of them pulsed in a warm, golden rhythm, Jake's rhythm. He laughed softly, shaking his head. He'd like that one. "BMO." "I know," BMO said, its voice flickering with a tiny hint of pride. The night went on. The fire burned low. The music changed once more, transforming into something slower, like the sound of breathing and sleep. Finn leaned back, letting his body sink into the grass. He felt the cool earth beneath him and the faint hum of life still flowing through it. All around, tiny sparks of light began to rise, not fireflies this time, but something else. Bits of magic, soft and dim, drifting upward like dust caught in sunlight. They followed the rhythm of BMO's song, floating higher with each note, until they became part of the starlight above. Finn whispered, "The world's singing with you." BMO didn't answer right away. It was too focused, too deep in the melody to break it. Then finally it said, "It always was, Finn. I'm just giving it a voice again." The song swelled gently, not loud but full, the way a calm sea fills the horizon. The sound wasn't coming just from BMO anymore. It came from the air, the earth, even the soft vibration beneath Finn's palms. It was the sound of everything still alive, remembering what it meant to be connected. Tears welled quietly in Finn's eyes, though he didn't feel sad. It was something else, a fullness that words couldn't touch. The same feeling he'd had as a child, watching the stars from his window, knowing there was something vast and kind watching back. BMO's screen flickered again, showing an image now Finn and Jake standing beneath the tree fort, arms thrown around each other, laughing, sunlight pouring through the leaves. The sound of their laughter mixed into the final verse BMO sang that night. When heroes rest and stories sleep, and laughter fades to quiet deep, I'll keep the rhythm, soft and small, until the world remembers it all. Finn closed his eyes. The music drifted over him like a blanket, wrapping the world in peace. And as the final note lingered in the still air, he realized this wasn't just a song. It was the heartbeat of Ooo itself, echoing one last time before the long, gentle quiet. As the night deepened, BMO's song became even softer, almost imperceptible at first, like the faintest whisper of wind across still water. Finn lay back in the grass, arms behind his head, listening to the gentle hum, letting it carry him. Each note felt like a droplet falling slowly, merging with the rhythm of the earth beneath them. The world seemed to sigh in response, a long exhale of everything it had ever been. The melody wrapped around the distant ruins of kingdoms, curling into the cracked walls of castles and overgrown towers. It seeped into the rivers that had once roared with life, now flowing quietly like veins of silver beneath the twilight. Every tree and stone seemed to vibrate slightly in time with the song, as if even the smallest particle of Ooo had remembered how to dance. Finn opened his eyes and watched as faint lights began to rise from the ground, tiny glimmers of magic that had lingered in hidden corners, forgotten spells, and long-dormant enchantments. The fireflies joined in, their gentle flickers turning into a soft, swirling ballet. The wind moved in harmony with the notes, bending tall grasses in a slow, undulating wave. Finn felt as though he was not simply listening to the song, but witnessing the very fabric of the world breathe once more. BMO continued, its voice delicate and unwavering. Every shadow that sleeps in the night, every star that forgets its own light, every laugh that once filled the skies, I carry them gently where memory lies. Finn closed his eyes again, letting the melody wash over him. He could hear echoes of everyone he had known. Jake's playful growls and chuckles, Marceline's soulful hums, Bubblegum's meticulous whispers, and even the distant, soft regrets of those who had walked darker paths. Every voice was folded into BMO's song, not lost, but preserved each note a gentle reminder that no one and nothing truly disappears. In that quiet, Finn understood something profound. BMO's song was not just a melody. It was a bridge connecting the past to the present, memory to reality, life to its own fading magic. And the world of Ooo, now in the twilight of its story, was responding. The fallen kingdoms and sleeping creatures were not silent witnesses. They were participants, breathing in the notes, their histories woven back into the music, like threads in a vast tapestry. Finn sat up slowly and watched as the glimmers of light above him began to gather, coalescing into faint, shimmering constellations that mirrored the memories of his friends. Each star seemed to pulse softly, in time with BMO's song, like the heartbeat of an entire world at rest. BMO, Finn whispered, "Do you think they can hear it? Everyone who was ever part of this place?" "I think they do," BMO replied quietly. "And even if they can't, it doesn't matter. The song remembers them. That's what counts." Finn smiled, his chest full of warmth. The thought of all those lives, heroes, villains, and everyone in between remembered in a single melody made him feel lighter than he had in years. It wasn't a song of endings or loss. It was a song of continuity, a gentle echo that would linger long after the final notes faded. The world seemed to lean into the music. Trees whispered softly. Rivers gleamed under the starlight, and the ruins of old cities hummed faintly, resonating with the harmony. Even the ground beneath Finn's feet felt alive, pulsing with the memory of footsteps, laughter, and stories long past. Ooo itself was singing back, creating a symphony of existence in the final twilight of its history. BMO's song shifted again, slower now, tender, almost like a lullaby. Finn felt sleep pressing gently at his eyes, and he allowed himself to sink into the grass fully, letting the melody cradle him. When the sun forgets to rise, and the moon drifts silent in the skies, I will hum for all that remains, until tomorrow returns again. The lyrics hung in the air, gentle and soft, fading into a quiet that was not empty but full of life remembered. Finn drifted, half asleep, feeling the warmth of the fire, the coolness of the night air, and the pulse of the world's own breath. Every note of BMO's song seemed to fold into him, carrying memories, love, and hope like a blanket. The constellations above seemed to shimmer a little brighter, the stars' gentle pulses syncing with the final measures of the song. Finn imagined Jake's laughter in the rhythm of the wind, Marceline's soft hum in the distant mountains, and Bubblegum's careful watch in the glow of the rivers. Every memory intertwined, forming a harmony so complete it felt infinite. BMO's voice grew softer, almost fading. Sleep, Ooo, in the cradle of dreams. Carry your stories in quiet streams. Though the world may close its eyes tonight, your songs will rise in the gentle light. Finn exhaled slowly, eyes closing fully. The world seemed to sigh with him, a long, contented breath, stretching across kingdoms, mountains, rivers, and plains. The melody lingered, soft and unwavering, until it became part of the very air, part of the stars, part of the earth beneath them. And in that quiet, as the night held them both in its gentle embrace, Finn realized the truth. BMO's song was the final heartbeat of Ooo, the last note in a symphony that had carried life itself through centuries of joy, sorrow, and adventure. It was a song of remembrance, a song of love, a song that would drift through the world forever, even when no one remained to hear it. Finn smiled faintly in sleep. BMO hummed its final softest note, and for the first time in a very long while, Ooo rested completely, wrapped in the tender embrace of its own story, cradled by the song of its last hero. The morning after BMO's song, the world felt softer, not quiet in the way of absence, but quiet in the way of gentle completion. Finn woke beneath the pale light of a sky tinged with lavender and gold, the memory of the melody still humming softly in the air. Even the earth seemed to stretch, as if taking a long, lazy breath, preparing for what was to come. The Land of Ooo, once so vibrant and chaotic, was beginning its final natural rhythm, the Great Unraveling, not in destruction or fire, but in the slow, inevitable folding of everything back into the quiet from which it had emerged. The forests softened, their leaves turning silver before drifting gently to the ground. Rivers slowed further, no longer hurrying to the sea, but stretching across the plains like liquid glass. Mountains seemed to lean into themselves, their jagged edges worn smooth by invisible hands. Finn walked through the ruins of the Ice Kingdom, now more sculpture than stronghold. The towers of ice, once jagged and imposing, had softened to misty forms. He could almost see the ghosts of snowflakes that had danced there, twirling in the cold air long before the last king had gone. Simon's spirit, or at least the echo of it, lingered faintly in the stones, whispering quiet lessons about love, loss, and forgiveness. Finn whispered a small thank you to him, not for guidance, but for simply being part of this world, a memory preserved in the frost. As he moved onward, Finn noticed the sky shifting subtly, as if the very fabric of reality were loosening its stitches. Stars dimmed and blinked slower, constellations that had guided adventurers for centuries stretching thin, preparing to fold back into the infinite. Winds carried with them fragments of sound laughter, distant cries, songs, and the soft hum of magic that had never truly disappeared. These sounds didn't vanish. They simply returned to the ether, mingling with the universe's endless expanse. The kingdoms themselves, those proud bastions of life and adventure, were unraveling too, though not violently. The Candy Kingdom's towers, vines curling over broken walls, seemed to exhale. The trees of the tree fort leaned lower, their branches resting upon each other like friends sharing a quiet conversation. Even the Fire Kingdom, cooled to black glass and scattered embers, was yielding the remnants of flames folding inward until all that remained was warmth stored in the memory of the land itself. Finn paused at the edge of a small abandoned village where tiny homes had long since crumbled into soft mounds of earth. The air smelled faintly of soil and rain, of things returning to their origin. He ran his hand over one of the tiny door frames, feeling its smoothness where wood had worn away with time. "Everything has to go somewhere," he whispered. "Even the stories." He thought of BMO humming its song through the night, its music carrying fragments of every hero, every creature, every small and fleeting joy that had ever existed in Ooo. That song had reminded him that even as the world unraveled, nothing was truly lost. Stories, memories, and love had a way of folding themselves into something eternal, even if the land itself changed form. Walking deeper into the quiet, Finn noticed the river slowing to the point of stillness. Tiny ripples reflected the pale sky, folding the light back into itself. Fish drifted lazily, and the water plants turned upward toward the dim glow, seeking no sun, no warmth, just their place in the rhythm of unraveling. He knelt beside the largest stream, letting his fingers touch the surface. It felt soft, liquid silk, a final reminder that even endings could carry comfort. In the distance, he could see the outlines of the mountains. Once they had been jagged and eternal, but now their edges were rounding, worn down by centuries of wind and memory. The very land itself seemed to be closing gently, as if tucking itself into a long, dreamless sleep. Hills slid softly into valleys, and forests, rivers, and plains all leaned into the quiet, surrendering their forms without struggle. Finn felt the weight of it all, not in sorrow, but in reverence. He realized that the Great Unraveling wasn't a death. It was a transition, the world returning to a state of calm, a universe remembering the beauty of soft silence after centuries of noise. Every stone, leaf, and river remembered its place, bending and folding into the next pattern of existence. Even creatures that had once roamed the land were becoming whispers of themselves. A lone fox padded through a forest, its fur now faint and ethereal, eyes glimmering with a memory of life. Birds that once sang bright, chaotic songs now floated as soft light shapes, their calls dissolving into gentle chords carried by the wind. The world itself was dissolving, and yet, paradoxically, it felt whole. Finn walked slowly through the shifting landscape, each step deliberate. He knew that soon there would be nothing solid left to walk upon. The world's final stories were being whispered into the air, into BMO's music, into the soft rustle of grass, and the gentle hum of fading rivers. And in all of it, he felt a profound peace, the kind of peace that comes not from knowing what is next, but from accepting that everything has its place and every story has its end. The unraveling spread outward like a slow tide, and Finn, walking beside BMO, felt as though he were moving through both memory and dream. He could see the Candy Kingdom's towers fold into themselves, forests lean gracefully towards the rivers, and mountains shrink softly against the horizon. Nothing was lost. Everything was remembered, folded delicately into the pattern of the world itself. And all around, the faintest glimmers of BMO's song carried on the wind, tying together the unraveling threads of Ooo, making the end feel like a lullaby, a gentle, peaceful song for the world itself. The unraveling continued with a rhythm that was almost imperceptible at first. Hills softened into gentle slopes, trees folded their branches inward as if bowing to an invisible audience, and rivers slowed to near motionless ribbons of glass. The air itself seemed to thicken with quiet, carrying a faint resonance of BMO's song. Each note brushed against the edges of the land, brushing away tension, smoothing sharp angles, and guiding the world into a natural, unhurried order. Finn walked through a valley that had once been alive with adventure. The cliffs were crumbling softly, their stone dust drifting into the air and settling like a pale mist over the ground. He could feel the echoes of old footsteps, the laughter of creatures long gone, and even the faint energy of battles that had shaped history. It was all still there, not as separate memories, but as part of the land itself. Every stone and blade of grass seemed to hum in quiet harmony with BMO's melody. He paused beside a stream, watching the water ripple lazily over smooth stones. It carried reflections of the sky, faintly glowing in the twilight hues of lavender and silver. Finn dipped his fingers in, feeling the warmth of the current, soft and alive in a way that defied explanation. He realized that this was what the unraveling felt like. Not destruction, not disappearance, but a return. The world was folding itself back into the quiet, returning to the source of its own magic. BMO floated beside him, its small screen glowing softly into the dim light. "Do you feel it too, Finn?" it asked. "Yeah," Finn said quietly. "It's peaceful. Like everything is finally taking a deep breath after a long, long journey." BMO hummed, and the notes drifted into the valley, intertwining with the sound of water, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant hum of distant mountains. The song and the land became inseparable, as if the world itself had begun to speak in BMO's voice. As they continued walking, the forest started to thin, the trees growing more translucent, their trunks and branches fading into the air. Animals that had once roamed freely now drifted gently like phantoms, still carrying the shapes and motions of life, yet softened and slowed, as if time itself were stretching. Finn watched a fox step delicately across a moss-covered log, its fur glowing faintly under the light of the fading stars. He realized that even in this quiet unraveling, the world had not lost its beauty. It was simply transforming into a different kind of magic, one that could be felt rather than touched, remembered rather than seen. The mountains in the distance seemed to bend and fold, their sharp peaks softening into curves, melting into the horizon like the edges of a dream. Clouds drifted low, carrying the last whispers of wind, and the sky deepened into the pale violet of a long dusk. Finn could feel the air around him hum with memory, each breath filled with the echo of 1,000 lives and stories, all woven into the slow, unfolding rhythm of the world's end. He stopped again, looking out across the land. Kingdoms, forests, mountains, and rivers were all moving gently toward their final forms. He felt no fear, only a quiet understanding. The Great Unraveling was not a loss. It was the world reminding itself of its own nature, returning to a state of calm, of dreamlike balance. And BMO's song, the melody that had carried memories, joy and love, continued to guide every thread of that transformation, as if the universe itself had been waiting for one last lullaby. Finn took a deep breath and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for everything." BMO's voice joined his, soft and warm. "The world thanks you too, Finn, for walking with it until the end." Together they continued onward, moving through the unraveling land, witnesses to the quiet magic of Ooo folding itself into its own gentle, infinite rest. As the day stretched on, the unraveling deepened, slow and deliberate, as if the world itself had decided to fold inward with grace. Finn and BMO moved across the plains where the rivers had become silver ribbons, reflecting pale light like liquid mirrors. Each step Finn took felt lighter, as though the earth was holding him gently, cushioning his passage as if it understood the weight of memories he carried. The ruins of once great castles now blended with the hills, their stones softening into gentle mounds. Towers once proud and upright, bent and curved, moss and ivy threading through the cracks, weaving the past into the present. The Candy Kingdom, now a delicate lattice of sugar-glass ruins, shimmered faintly under BMO's soft glow. It was no longer a home, but a memory preserved in light and shadow, a delicate fragment of a world that had been full of laughter, adventure, and sweetness. Finn paused at the base of a fallen peppermint spire. He ran his hand across the rough, crystallized surface, feeling the echoes of countless footsteps and joyful screams embedded in the stone. "Everything we loved," he whispered. "It's all still here, in its own way." BMO floated closer, screen flickering with gentle colors that mirrored the morning light. "Yes, Finn, the world doesn't forget. It simply changes form, and change is just another kind of life." Finn nodded, watching the soft ripples of water in the nearby stream. Each ripple caught the light, sparkling faintly like tiny fragments of memory. The fish within, now almost translucent, glided slowly, weaving through the water as though it too remembered the vibrancy of life that had once rushed through every corner of Ooo. As they moved onward, the mountains in the distance began to shift subtly. Their jagged edges softened, folding inwards like the closing of a great book. Peaks that had pierced the sky now leaned gently into one another, forming valleys that had never existed before. It was as if Ooo itself was rewriting its contours to reflect the calm of its own fading magic. Finn marveled at it quietly, understanding without words that this was not destruction. It was transformation, the final, gentle art of a world completing its story. The forests thinned and shimmered with ethereal light. Trees became translucent, their leaves flickering softly, holding echoes of old songs, old footsteps, and laughter that had once filled the woods. Animals moved like soft shadows, their forms blurred and yet their presence undeniable. Even the birds whose calls had once filled the skies with melody now drifted like faint streaks of light. Their songs folded into the harmony of the world's unraveling. BMO hummed along softly, a counterpoint to the subtle murmurs of nature. The little robot's melody was no longer just a song. It was a guiding thread, a tether between memory and reality, weaving together all that had been into something that could persist even as the tangible world faded. Finn felt the song reverberate through his chest, not in sound alone, but in the pulse of the earth, the rhythm of air, and the warmth of the fading sunlight. "BMO," Finn said quietly, "do you think anyone else notices this? The way everything is folding, becoming quiet?" "They might not see it," BMO replied, "but they can feel it. Every world has its own memory. And even if nothing else remains, the story carries itself in the air, in the light, in the wind." Finn walked through a field where the grass swayed slowly, bending toward each other as if in silent conversation. He could feel the echoes of battles fought, of friendships forged, of moments of joy and sorrow imprinted in every blade. The unraveling was gentle, yes, but it was complete. Every fragment of Ooo, every echo of life, was being folded into the quiet, preserving the essence of the world even as its form dissolved. They reached a small hill overlooking the Valley of Echoes. The valley had changed little in appearance, but the sounds within it were different. Voices, once clear and distinct, had softened into long, drawn-out echoes, fading gradually into silence. Finn could hear faint murmurs of his friends, their laughter, their songs, their stories all carried by the wind, resonating in perfect harmony with BMO's gentle tune. He knelt down and touched the earth, feeling it pulse faintly beneath his fingertips. It was alive, still carrying the rhythm of existence, even as the world above it shifted and softened. Finn realized then that the Great Unraveling was not an end to life. It was a kind of preservation, a way for Ooo to store itself within itself, keeping the memory of everything it had been intact, even as the physical forms dissolved into dreamlike simplicity. BMO floated beside him, humming the final notes of a verse, its screen glowing with a soft gradient of colors that seemed to capture the very soul of the world. "The song carries everything," BMO said softly. "Every joy, every sorrow, every adventure. Nothing is lost. It simply becomes part of something greater." Finn leaned back, eyes tracing the contours of the valley, the rivers, and the forest that shimmered in the soft light. He understood now that the unraveling was a lullaby, sung not just by BMO, but by the land itself, a slow, deliberate melody designed to ease Ooo into rest. And in that rest, he felt a profound sense of completion, a knowledge that all the stories, all the lives, all the laughter and tears would continue to exist in some quiet, infinite way. The wind carried the song across the valley, and Finn closed his eyes, letting the music, the earth, and the fading light carry him forward. In the unraveling of the world, he found not loss, but a deep, enduring peace, the kind that comes from knowing that every story, every memory, and every heartbeat had been honored, preserved, and folded gently into the quiet eternity of Ooo itself. As twilight deepened, the Great Unraveling unfolded with a quiet majesty that was almost imperceptible, yet undeniable. The world seemed to breathe slowly, expansively, as if inhaling its own history before exhaling it into memory. Hills leaned softly against the horizon. Rivers slowed to silvery mirrors, and the forest shimmered with translucent light, their trees folding inwards gently like long-forgotten origami. Finn and BMO walked together through this subtle transformation, each step a delicate acknowledgement of the world's final rhythm. The ruins of old kingdoms had become dreamlike. The Candy Kingdom's sugar-spired towers bent and leaned into one another, softened by moss and time, catching the last glimmers of sunlight and turning them into pale, candy-colored reflections. The Fire Kingdom's cooled embers glowed faintly in scattered patterns across blackened stone, as if the warmth of laughter and life still lingered within. Even the Ice Kingdom's towers of frost, once jagged and unyielding, now seemed to dissolve into mist, scattering their icy whispers into the air. Finn paused at the edge of a field where flowers had begun to shimmer faintly, their petals fading into light itself. He knelt, running his fingers over the soft ground, and felt the pulse of everything that had lived here, creatures, heroes, villains, friends, and strangers alike. Every footstep, every laugh, every tear seemed to hum beneath his touch. The Great Unraveling, he realized, was not an erasure. It was a preservation, a folding of all that Ooo had been into the quiet pulse of existence. BMO floated nearby, its screen glowing softly, a small beacon in the dimming light. The song is everywhere now. Even in the spaces you can't see, it carries the world forward. Finn smiled faintly, brushing grass from his hands. It's like the world itself is humming, isn't it? All the stories, all the memories, they're still here. Yes, BMO replied, its voice soft and steady. They never left. They're just moving into a different rhythm, one that's slower, quieter, and eternal. They walked on, passing the skeletal remains of a forest once dense with life. The trees, now transparent, swayed gently in the wind, their branches touching lightly, brushing against each other like old friends saying goodbye. A fox, barely more than a shimmering shadow, padded softly across the path, its eyes bright with memory. Finn watched it go, feeling the pulse of life linger in the ephemeral creature, a reminder that the end of form did not mean the end of essence. The rivers slowed further, flowing like molten glass, reflecting the soft, fading light of the sky. Fish, now almost spectral, glided beneath the surface, their movements languid, graceful, as if dancing to BMO's distant melody. Finn knelt again, letting his hands skim the water. It was cool, alive, and full of quiet resonance. "Even the water remembers," he whispered. "Yes," BMO agreed, "and it sings along." The mountains beyond the valley had softened into gentle curves, peaks dissolving into the horizon. Clouds hung low and heavy, tinged with violet and silver, moving in slow harmony with the land below. Finn felt as if he were walking through a dream within a dream, where time itself had chosen to slow and honor every story that had ever unfolded here. The Great Unraveling spread through the skies as well. Stars blinked slowly, dimming to soft pulses, constellations stretching like threads of fabric ready to fold into a quilt. The wind carried fragments of old songs and laughter, weaving them into the space between earth and sky. Even the air vibrated softly, alive with memory, humming in quiet unison with BMO's lullaby. Finn paused at a hill overlooking a valley that had once been alive with adventure. The land now seemed suspended between existence and memory, every detail softened into a gentle abstraction. He felt a profound peace wash over him, the kind that comes from knowing that every laugh, every tear, every fleeting joy, every sorrowful moment had been honored. The unraveling was not an end, but a gentle folding away for Ooo to preserve itself in memory, music, and light. BMO floated closer, its song fading to the faintest whisper. "Everything you see," it said softly, "is becoming part of the world's last story. And even when you can't see it, it will still exist in the wind, the stars, the rivers, and in dreams." Finn let his hand hover over the grass, feeling the faint warmth of the earth. "It's beautiful," he said, a voice low, "like the world itself is tucking itself into sleep." "Yes," BMO agreed. "And tomorrow, when everything is quiet, it will remember all of this." Finn closed his eyes, leaning back against the gentle slope of the hill. The melody of BMO's song intertwined with the whispers of the unraveling land, rivers flowing, trees bending, stars pulsing. It was a harmony that required no words, no witnesses. It existed simply, purely, as the essence of everything that had ever been. The soft glow of twilight faded to a deep violet, the air cooling around them. Finn felt the gentle pulse of the world beneath him, rhythmic and slow. Every kingdom, every forest, every stream, every creature real or memory was folding itself into quiet existence, preparing for a long, serene rest. BMO's screen glowed faintly, colors shifting slowly like breathing. Its voice, barely more than a whisper, carried the final verse of its song into the night. "When all the stories have been told, and heroes rest, and stars grow old, I hum for those who cannot stay, and fold the world into gentle gray." Finn exhaled a long, quiet sigh. He could feel the rhythm of Ooo itself, the heartbeat of every life and every story moving into rest. And as the final notes faded into the air, he realized the truth of it. The Great Unraveling was not an ending to mourn, but a lullaby to cradle the world. Every memory, every song, every laughter and tear was preserved, in the very fabric of existence, held in the gentle folds of time, space, and quiet eternity. And as the stars pulsed faintly above, the rivers stilled, the forests whispered, and the mountains leaned softly towards the horizon, Finn walked onward with BMO by his side, witnesses to a world folding itself into the deepest, most peaceful sleep it had ever known. The unraveling of Ooo had settled into a rhythm so gentle, it almost felt like a heartbeat. Finn walked through the softened hills and quiet valleys, BMO floating by his side, carrying the faint echoes of its lullaby in every note. The world was no longer a collection of kingdoms, forests, or rivers. It had become a single, breathing entity, stretching itself into the quiet and the calm. And in this quiet, Finn began to notice something extraordinary, the dream that remained. Even as the physical forms of Ooo folded into themselves, the essence of its stories lingered like a soft haze across the land. Shapes of trees, rivers, and mountains still existed, though less as solid matter and more as memory made visible. Finn could see the outlines of the tree fort, its leaves now a faint shimmer in the distance. He could see a bridge of light where the Candy Kingdom had once stood, a translucent reminder of laughter, joy, and the countless small adventures that had threaded through its towers. Everything had softened, but nothing had truly vanished. The dream that remained was alive. It moved in the wind, carried on the faint ripples of streams, and hovered in the space between clouds. Finn reached out, and the air itself seemed to resist and then yield to his hand, like a soft blanket of memory. BMO's song, still faint and enduring, wove through the dream, carrying the echoes of heroes, friends, and all the lives that had touched Ooo. Finn could feel the stories, not in his mind, but in his chest, warm and steady. He wandered through the ghostly forests, where trees leaned toward one another in quiet conversation. The light shimmered through their translucent leaves in slow, rhythmic pulses, almost like breathing. Shadows moved across the ground, soft and fluid, not bound by the rules of the world he had once known, and in each movement he could see traces of life that had passed through the fox that once darted here, a bird's faint flight, Jake's laughter skipping across the leaves. The dream preserved them all. BMO floated closer, its screen glowing with the soft gradient of dawn. "This is what I was singing for," it said gently. "Not for the world you see now, but for the world that will always be remembered. The dream of Ooo." Finn nodded, closing his eyes for a moment and letting the warmth of the memory wash over him. "It's comforting," he whispered. "Even if everything else is gone, this still exists, the heart of it all." They moved onward, following the soft currents of light that flowed where rivers had once run more boldly. The dream seemed to guide them now, drawing them across valleys and hills with gentle nudges. Everywhere Finn looked, the echoes of Oo's people appeared, lingering in ways that were not quite real but not quite imagined. He could see Princess Bubblegum's careful, precise movements, Marceline strumming a chord that resonated through the air, and even Gunter sliding across a patch of frost that no longer existed, leaving trails of faint starlight in its wake. The mountains in the distance were no longer jagged and harsh, but curved softly into the horizon, their peaks touching the sky like the folds of a blanket. Clouds hung low and heavy, painted in lavender and silver hues, drifting in harmony with the quiet rhythm of the land. Finn could feel the pulse of the dream in every breath of air, in the warmth of the soft ground, in the faint shimmer of light that floated from hill to hill. Everywhere the world hummed with quiet life, a life that was not tied to physical form but to memory and song. The unraveling had made room for the dream to shine, to exist freely. Finn realized that the essence of the laughter, the sorrow, the wonder, the friendships, would never fade. It had become eternal, a tapestry woven from the threads of countless adventures, preserved in the gentle folds of time, light, and sound. BMO floated beside him, the hum of its final song echoing faintly through the soft air. Even when there is nothing to see, the dream remains, it said. Even when the world is quiet, the stories will whisper to anyone who remembers to listen. Finn looked out over the valley below, the dream stretching endlessly before him. Every ripple of water, every bending tree, every soft shimmer of light was alive with the echoes of those who had touched the world. And in that moment, he understood something profound. Ooo would never truly end. Its body might fold into quiet, its kingdoms might dissolve, but its heart, the dream, would always remain, carrying everything forward in a gentle, eternal lullaby. He took a deep, slow breath, letting the peace of the moment settle into him. The stars above began to shimmer faintly, reflected in the rivers that now moved like liquid lights. The wind whispered through the grass, bending the blades gently, carrying the faintest traces of BMO's song across every hill and valley. Finn felt the presence of every friend, every adventure, every moment of wonder in the quiet, a soft chorus that hummed within the dream. And as he walked on, Finn knew that this was the true magic of the world. Not the kingdoms, not the battles, not even the adventures themselves, but the dream that remained. The quiet heartbeat of Ooo, preserved in light, memory, and song, carrying forward all that had been, all that was loved, and all that would always be remembered. The dream stretched endlessly before Finn, a vast landscape woven from memory and song. Each step he took felt lighter than the last, as if the very ground beneath him had softened to carry him effortlessly through the echoes of time. The air shimmered faintly, carrying faint fragments of BMO's melody, intertwining with the whispers of the wind, the rustle of translucent leaves, and the soft pulse of rivers that now flowed like ribbons of liquid starlight. He walked past the remains of the tree fort, its silhouette still visible as a faint shimmer of light and energy. The leaves above glowed softly, their pulses carrying the echoes of laughter, chatter, and quiet moments of reflection from years gone by. Finn could almost see Jake stretching lazily on one of the branches, his long body glowing faintly in the dreamlight, tail swishing as though to beat time with BMO's hum. Marceline's faint silhouette drifted past, plucking at a spectral base that left trails of shimmering color in the air. And even Princess Bubblegum, meticulous and bright, seemed to hover softly among the ruins, her presence calm and steady, an anchor of memory in the gentle chaos of the dream. The valleys and hills of Ooo, softened now by the unraveling, curved gracefully into one another, forming a flowing, endless landscape. Streams of light traced the paths of rivers that had once carved the land with vigor, carrying faint reflections of fish, frogs, and all manner of creatures that had once lived there. Finn knelt beside one of these streams, touching the surface with his fingertips. The water pulsed gently under his hand, and he could feel the presence of countless moments folded into it, moments of play, of wonder, of sorrow and joy alike. Even here, he whispered, even when the world isn't real anymore, life still hums. Yes, BMO agreed softly, floating beside him. It hums in the dream. Everything that existed, everything that mattered. It's all still here. Finn smiled faintly, letting his gaze drift across the horizon. Mountains, once sharp and immovable, now bent and swirled like liquid stone, their peaks dissolving into clouds that shimmered with silver and lavender. Valleys flowed like fabric, folding over themselves with ease, creating new shapes that were both familiar and strange. The world had become a living memory, a place that could be felt and experienced, but not touched in the old way. And yet, In this dream space, it was more real than any reality Finn had ever known. Small creatures, ghosts of the life that had once thrived in Ooo, moved lightly through the dream. A fox flickered past him, translucent but bright-eyed, carrying the faintest trace of warmth in its step. Birds drifted above in slow, fluid arcs, their calls folded into the soft harmony of BMO's hum. Even the tiniest insects appeared as trails of light, dancing through the air in perfect synchronicity with the rhythm of the world. Each movement was gentle, deliberate, as if every being knew that their purpose was now to preserve the dream, to add to the quiet melody that BMO had begun. Finn felt a swell of emotion he could not name. There was no sadness, no fear, only reverence, only the comfort of knowing that the lives, stories, and magic of Ooo were not lost. They had merely changed form, becoming part of a timeless, endless dream. The unraveling of the world had given way to the persistence of its essence, and in that persistence, Finn felt a deep, unshakable peace. He wandered further, following the shimmering threads of light that marked the paths of old adventures. Every hill, every stream, every faint glimmer of a forgotten forest carried with it the memories of those who had walked there. And everywhere he looked, the dream responded, bending, shimmering, breathing as if the world itself had chosen to linger in this gentle, reflective state. BMO floated beside him, screen glowing with soft gradients of color, its voice blending seamlessly with the hum of the dream. "This is the last gift to Ooo," it said quietly. "A place where the world can continue, even when the forms we knew are gone. A place where stories, memories, and love live on, forever." Finn nodded, letting the words settle into him. He realized that the dream was more than just a memory or a melody. It was the essence of Ooo itself, preserved in the folds of time, light, and song. And as he continued to walk through this gentle, glowing landscape, he understood that no matter what happened to the physical world, the dream that remained would carry everything forward: the laughter, the tears, the adventures, and the quiet moments of reflection, all woven together in a lullaby that would never end. Finn continued through the shimmering dreamscape, each step drawing him deeper into the quiet heart of Ooo. Hills and valleys flowed like soft waves beneath his feet, and streams of liquid starlight traced the paths of rivers that had long since ceased to run. The air hummed faintly with BMO's lullaby, carrying echoes of every life that had touched this land. It was a symphony without sound, a gentle vibration that resonated through the very fabric of the dream. As he walked, Finn noticed faint silhouettes of the friends and allies who had shared his journey. Jake drifted along a luminous path, his body stretched and bending like light through water. Playful energy softened into gentle pulses. Marceline floated nearby, spectral hair trailing behind her, strumming a chord that bent the dream's light into delicate arcs. Princess Bubblegum appeared at the edge of a hill, her form glowing softly as she observed the world she had once ruled with precision. Each presence was ephemeral, yet unmistakably alive, a part of the enduring memory that the unraveling had preserved. Finn paused beside a forest that had once been dense with life, now softened into a quiet swirl of translucent trees. Leaves shimmered in hues of lavender and silver, brushing softly against one another, as if sharing secrets of centuries past. The forest floor glimmered faintly with light, and the faintest echoes of laughter and footsteps danced among the trunks. He knelt and touched the shimmering ground, feeling the pulse of the dream beneath his fingers. Every moment, every story, every laugh and tear that had occurred here was folded into this place, preserved in the gentle weave of memory and magic. BMO floated beside him, its voice a soft murmur in the calm. "This is the world that endures, Finn. Even when the kingdoms crumble and the rivers run quiet, the dream remains. It carries everything that ever mattered, all of it woven into something eternal. Finn nodded, eyes tracing the streams of light that now replaced the rivers. Tiny translucent creatures moved through the currents, fish and frogs gliding slowly, almost suspended, their forms softened by the dream's gentle rhythm. Birds drifted overhead in slow arcs, their calls folded seamlessly into the hum of the world. The land itself seemed to breathe, a living memory folding into itself, shaping the dream into a place of quiet continuity. The mountains in the distance, softened by the unraveling, bent and curved in ways that seemed impossible yet natural. Peaks leaned toward one another, valleys folded into gentle slopes, and clouds shimmered above in a dance of lavender and silver light. Finn realized that Ooo had become a place of pure essence, a world without solid boundaries, where form was optional and memory was everything. He walked through fields that had once been vibrant with color and life, now a glowing tapestry of light and shadow. Flowers bloomed softly in ephemeral waves, petals dissolving into streams of gentle luminance before reforming elsewhere. Every step Finn took left a faint imprint in the dream, a subtle ripple that carried the energy of presence and intention, blending seamlessly with the memory of all who had walked there before. BMO's hum grew a little louder, notes bending and curving to match the undulations of the landscape. Even the smallest moments live here, it said. A laugh, a tear, a song, a quiet sigh. All of it exists, folded gently into the dream. Nothing is lost. Finn let his hand hover over a stream of light, feeling it pulse softly under his touch. He could sense the energy of all the adventures, all the friendships, all the losses and victories that had shaped Ooo. And yet, in this dream, they were not fragmented or chaotic. They were whole, unified in a quiet harmony that required no effort, no witnessing, just gentle presence. He wandered toward a hill overlooking a broad valley where the faint glimmer of the tree fort shimmered like a beacon. The dream seemed to pulse more strongly here, carrying concentrated memories of the adventures, triumphs, and quiet nights spent in simple companionship. Finn could see the outlines of Jake stretching lazily across the branches, Marceline's soft melodies drifting like light ribbons, and even the tiniest echoes of old friends who had passed through, their presence preserved as part of the landscape. The world. It doesn't have to be here to exist, Finn murmured, awestruck. Even when everything fades, the heart of it stays. Yes, BMO agreed, its voice soft as a whisper. The heart of it, the dream of it, is eternal. That is what we carry forward. That is what will remain even when no one is left to watch. Finn closed his eyes, letting the gentle rhythm of the dream carry him. The rivers of light, the translucent forests, the softly glowing mountains all breathed together in perfect harmony, a lullaby composed of every story and memory Ooo had ever held. And as he listened, he felt the deepest, most abiding peace, the knowledge that the world he loved was not truly gone. It existed here, in this dream that endured, in this quiet, eternal lullaby of memory, song, and love. Finn continued walking through the endless dreamscape, each step slower than the last, as though the world itself were guiding him gently toward rest. The soft glow of the horizon stretched endlessly, a spectrum of muted purples, silvers, and pale golds that seemed to pulse with the memory of every sunrise and sunset Ooo had ever known. Every mountain, every hill, every stream and forest hummed faintly with the echoes of life, their forms softened into delicate, translucent shapes that radiated quiet, enduring beauty. The air around him shimmered with faint particles of memory, drifting slowly like dust in sunlight. He could feel them brushing against his skin, carrying the echoes of laughter, joy and the quiet sighs of creatures who had long since passed from the physical world. Each echo was a gentle reminder that even when the kingdoms crumbled, even when rivers ran still, even when mountains leaned softly into the horizon, Ooo itself had not vanished. Its essence persisted, carried in the dream that remained. BMO floated beside him, its screen glowing softly, casting a warm, comforting light across the shifting landscape. Its hum had become a lullaby of the universe, notes bending and curving to meet the rhythms of the land. Every story, BMO whispered, every adventure, every small moment that seemed insignificant, is preserved here. This dream carries it all. Finn looked out across a valley where the forest had dissolved into glowing silhouettes, their branches brushing together in silent conversation. Shadows of creatures flitted among the trees, moving with the grace of remembered motion rather than physical weight. Birds, foxes, and even the tiniest insects traced slow, luminous arcs through the air, weaving together a tapestry of existence that was both ethereal and vividly real. He paused by a stream of light that flowed like liquid starlight, its surface rippling gently under an unseen breeze. Leaning over, he dipped his hand in, feeling the pulse of the dream beneath his fingers. He could sense every story embedded in the flow, the battles, the quiet nights, the friendships, and the fleeting moments of wonder. They had all folded themselves into the fabric of this dream, preserved in a calm, eternal harmony. Finn wandered further, crossing hills that curved softly into one another, and valleys that glimmered with memory. The tree fort shimmered faintly in the distance, translucent yet unmistakably present, its branches swaying with the echoes of laughter and song. Marceline's soft, spectral melodies drifted from the fort like ribbons of light, entwining with the pulses of the rivers and the faint glimmer of stars above. The presence of friends and allies lingered everywhere, subtle and comforting, a gentle chorus that hummed through the dreamscape. The sky above had deepened into a vast expanse of violet, dotted with faint, pulsing stars that mirrored the rivers below. Clouds drifted slowly, shimmering in silver and lavender hues, moving in perfect harmony with the quiet rhythm of the land. Finn felt the gentle pull of the dream guiding him forward, carrying him across the fields, over the soft slopes, and through the glowing forest that had once teemed with life. BMO's song, now a soft and steady hum, wound through every corner of the dream. "This is the last gift of Ooo," it said quietly. "A world that cannot end because it exists beyond time, beyond form. The dream will carry everything forward. It will never fade." Finn smiled, closing his eyes and taking a slow, deep breath. He could feel the pulse of every memory, every story, every echo of joy and sorrow in the air around him. It was a lullaby unlike any he had ever known, gentle and persistent, a song that cradled the soul of the world itself. Even as the land had folded into soft light and memory, Ooo remained alive in the dream, in the laughter, in the love, in the quiet, eternal song of its being. He wandered toward a hill overlooking the entirety of the dreamscape, the faint outlines of mountains, valleys, rivers, and forests stretching as far as he could see. Everything shimmered softly, flowing and breathing together, a single living memory, a tapestry of light and song. Finn realized that this was the ultimate truth of Ooo, that it would always exist, in some form, for all time. He sat on the hill, BMO floating beside him, both of them bathed in the gentle glow of the dream. The melody of the world wrapped around them, threads of every story, every adventure, every friendship, interwoven into a perfect, eternal harmony. Finn felt his body relax, his mind quiet, and his heart settle into the rhythm of the dream. As he looked out over the glowing, infinite landscape, he whispered softly, "The world may end, but its heart its heart will always remain. BMO's screen pulsed with warm colors, echoing his words. Yes, Finn, the dream carries it all. Every laugh, every tear, every story. Nothing is ever truly lost. And so in the quiet glow of the dream that remained, Finn closed his eyes. The rivers hummed, the forests whispered, the mountains leaned softly, and BMO's lullaby drifted into the infinite sky. Every fragment of Ooo, every memory, every note of its music had been folded gently into this eternal, peaceful space. The world was quiet now, but it was alive in a way that transcended form. A gentle, everlasting lullaby that would carry the heart of Ooo forward for all time. Good night.